New York CEO is suing his employees because he alleges that they all took turns taking poops through the top of his convertible Lamborghini. Yesterday, he eliminated all of their Christmas bonuses, and then today he showed up in a brand new convertible Lamborghini. With the CEO stuck in meetings all day, the employees went down to the parking underneath the building and paid off the parking attendant to look the other way, and then they took some laxatives so that they would be ready to blow. When the CEO had time to go down to his car, he realized that something smelled, and then he realized that it was his Lamborghini Turtonator right in front of him. So he starts yelling at the parking attendant, "How did you let this happen? What happened?" And the guy's like, "I don't know. Nobody was here. I don't know what's going on." And he's like, "I need to see the security footage." He's like, "Unfortunately, the security footage doesn't work. Those cameras, they just don't work." The CEO goes back up to the office and he's yelling at people like, "Hey, is this about the Christmas bonuses?" And they're like, "We don't know what you're talking about, but this sounds like a pretty crappy situation." And the CEO's like, "I'm going to figure out who did this. I called the tow truck and they're going to tow this to a lab and we're going to do some DNA testing on the poop or whatever and see if there's a way to figure out who did this."
I saw it. Now you got to. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Fani Bounced. I am your host, Joe Neerman. Today, the long-awaited day that I predicted would one day come, has finally come. Fani Willis has been removed, kicked to the curb, bounced out of the Trump RICO action down in Georgia. She and her completely incompetent and inept staff are no longer permitted to prosecute that case against Donald Trump and his co-defendants in that particular action. Congratulations to Ashley Merchant, Stephen Sideau, and countless other attorneys who did very fine work. Very, very, very fine work. Not easy work, and it's type of work which is often very not rewarding. Rarely does it have quite the level of success that this one has. Now, the case is still technically ongoing, as we will see. However, it needs to be picked up by a different prosecuting team in Georgia. And most folks are speculating that seems unlikely to happen. And this could basically be left on the vine to rot away. So she was bounced out of Fani. I'll tell you this much. I guess you remember. Yes, of course you remember Tripp and Stiglitz, for crying out loud. It's not at all a cult type of cult. Yeah, so I'm going to show you a video here, which I'm like, I so like just really, there's certain parts of this that I feel very proud that I nailed. The day that the initial decision from Judge McAfee came out, certain part, I have to, and that I feel proud that if you were following me 9 months ago and you watched my coverage talking about this, you were basically like, you were presented with like a Nostradamus type of perspective as to what's going to happen when this works its way through the appellate court. We reviewed it myself, and I was like, wow, pretty damn good job. The appellate court pretty much said, as Good Lawgic said, and then just wrote the rest of their opinion. It was very humbling. Felt really good. So I guess perhaps, I don't know, some people critique me. They say, oh, Joe doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't know. I'm doing okay. I'm just saying, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. That's a jurisdiction I've never practiced in. I still can tell how the law works. I can tell how things operate. But anyway, I work my tail off trying to keep you as informed as possible, and I'm very pleased that was one such occasion. So we're just going to look a little bit at that so you could see where I basically was walking my audience through what may likely happen when this goes through the appellate court. We also have a lot of political machinations going on today. Infighting in the GOP. A lot of infighting. Where it's like basically, no, you're a rhino. No, you're a rhino. No, you're a rhino. No, you're a rhino. Which is basically like, I'm sensing that now people are using the term rhino the way the left uses the term fascists. Like, do you understand what rhino really means? Do you understand what it really means? Because I get the feeling a lot of folks don't really understand what the term rhino means. We got infighting between Cat Turd and Crenshaw, where you know whose side I'm going to end up taking there. We have infighting against Lindsey Graham. You know which side I'm going to take there. And then we have infighting between Trump and Chip Roy. And all sorts of people basically being like, you're sort of starting to see a developing situation here. A developing situation which is probably going to come up more and more once Trump is sworn in, God willing, on January 20th, where it's like, what happens when Trump seems to deviate from conservative perspectives? And I'll talk more. I've been talking on X about this, and I think it's not so black and white. I don't think I think it's I've taken a very it's a very uncomfortable position. I'm not gonna get you. It's a very uncomfortable position. If you say anything that is not lauding Trump as being some soothsayer, some infallible soothsayer, unless you're basically, oh, you're right. I'm like, wait, do you know what rhino really means? I mean, I'm screaming for conservatism, and I'm saying this is not enough conservative enough. No, you're a rhino. The whole point of rhinos is that rhinos are not. You know what rhino means? I mean, you know what it means, right? I mean, you know what it means, don't you? It's like when the liberals are screaming, we have to throw our opponents in jail to save democracy. I'm like, do you even know what words you're using? Just find another word. I'd be happier. I'd be more comfortable with blasphemer. You want to tell me about blasphemer? I'm like, all right, at least you recognize we're getting a little bit more of a feeling as to where you're coming from here. Everyone knows I'm wearing this freaking red hat. I am massive, avid, crazy Trump supporter. I'm not willing to call the man infallible. And I'm even not willing to even go out so far on a limb and say, like, that's not impossible. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that he's going to be more inclinated towards short-term thinking rather than long-term thinking, given how he's acted historically and given how, that's what the way presidents tend to think much more short-term than long-term. It's a very common thing. And that maybe we should not just think about things short-term, because if we don't think about the long-term, we know the Democrats, when they're in control, are never going to think about the long-term. It's tough. It's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to do to try and go down the long-term. I don't kid you. It's tough. All right. Mostly not a cult daily dues. God bless you, Fletcher boy. Thank you. Rhino insert picture Mitch McConnell here. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. That's fair. That's fair. Okay, I'll give you an example on this. And we're going to get to Fani Willis first. I'm going to cover that first. But I just want you to think about something. A lot of people love calling DeSantis, people who are against DeSantis call him Rhino. And it's like, all right, you got to show me which policies that he's saying here. It's not like once you're fighting against Trump, that makes you Rhino. Just to be clear, that doesn't make you Republican in name only. Because it's not as if Trump is your classic conservative. So if you have an America First perspective and looking out for America's health in the long term, you can have a very strong America First perspective and still disagree with Trump. I mean, those two are not necessarily, in direct, clashing with each other. That's the point I'm making. But we'll talk about it. Well, we got a lot to talk about. Some people are easy to call. Yeah, Lindsey Graham's an easy call. Frankly, I don't think calling Chip Roy a rhino has any sense behind it. I don't think there's much sense behind that at all. We could disagree with him. You could say he's wrong. That makes sense. That I can understand someone saying. But the label rhino just doesn't really work there. Doesn't really apply there. All right. Anyhow, let's start. Let us start with, I want to start with Fani Willis, and I want to get to this first. Let's deal with Fani Willis first. So let's bring this up here. I'm not gonna go like line by line through this thing here, just because. We'll do a quick thing. That wasn't the sound I wanted to hear. This is the decision that came down today in the Court of Appeals of Georgia, December 19th. December 19th, 2024. Roman v. State, Schaefer v. State, etc., Trump v. State, etc., etc. All right. These people charged in a 97-page indictment. All these defendants, we know their names. We know who they are. We got a big feel for who they are as people and everything else like that. All right. So these folks were all brought in here, and they appealed from the trial court's order denying their motion to dismiss and indictment and grant in part, et cetera, et cetera. And the motion is to disqualify Fani Willis. Get rid of her. We don't like her. She sucks. Everyone knows she sucks. She's got this big stinky odor of mendacity. She's just a walking disaster zone. So they said, we want to get rid of her. All right. And they assert numerous grounds to reverse the trial court's order, including the trial court imposed an improper remedy. That remedy, as you may recall, was he said one of you has got to go, either Fani or Nathan Wade. And they said that Willis' prosecution encumbered by significant appearance of impropriety, not grounded on mere status alone. And the state says, no, we got to affirm the trial court's order in its totality. And an alternative remedy requiring that either Willis, along with the whole office, step aside and refer the case to prosecuting attorney's counsel for reassignment, or Special Assistant District Attorney Nathan Wade withdraw from the case. Importantly, the state has not filed a cross appeal asserting the trial court's finding of appearance and impropriety should be reversed. This is something that they say this is a pretty big deal to us, that they seem to accept his findings of fact. Now, again, we're going to talk a lot about findings of fact versus findings of law. Usually findings of fact are the exclusive domain of a jury, and then the trial judge will sit with respect to findings of law. When you have a bench trial, see, he sort of wears both hats. He makes findings of fact and finding of law. I was trying to explain this to my 10-year-old today, where I was basically saying, imagine you have a trial, you have a hearing, and person A says that the other guy ran the red light, right? The plaintiff says the other guy ran the red light, and the defense says I didn't run the red light. That's a question of fact. Did he run the red light? Did he not? We have to have a determination on that question of fact. So the judge is going to determine and say, I find that he ran the red light, or I found he did not run the red light. Once we have this finding of that factual nugget, I'm going to take that fact nugget and perhaps some other fact nuggets that I'm going to reach that determination and say, this is the facts that we have set up as far as what happened. And based on these facts, I'm going to apply the law and say, this is what the law says we do when these facts happen. So I'm now assessing, so there's a finding of fact and then applying the law to that fact. When an appeals court is looking at what a trial judge did, the findings of fact are almost never disturbed. It's almost impossible to disturb it. Not completely impossible, but you would have to be showing that there was fraud or I mean, complete. I mean, it's for our purposes, it's impossible. For all intents and purposes, in almost every scenario, whatever the findings of fact are, and if you express that these are my findings of fact, which usually is what the judge will do, because he wants to explain, this is why I'm reaching these conclusions of law. It's based on these findings of fact that I made. So that becomes like sort of your body as far as like, okay, As far as the law is concerned, factually, these are the series of events that unfolded. Now, an appellate court can look at that set of facts as when these set of facts happen, this is the law that should apply, and the judge might have been wrong when he applied the law. We think that he was wrong when he applied the law. And that's where you're much more likely to have a reversal of a judge saying, yeah, okay, those are your factual findings. Once you have those factual findings, now you have to reach a different conclusion of the law. Your conclusion as to what the law says within this set of facts was mistaken. And that's where you get the reversal of a lower court by an appellate court. So his findings of law are very easy to be overturned in theory by an appellate court. Findings of fact, almost never. And this is one of the things that I hit on pretty aptly 9 months ago when I was covering this case, as we'll see shortly. Accordingly, whether the evidence presented to the trial court adequately supported under the appropriate standard of review and appeal is finding of existence or appearance of impropriety is not before this court. In other words, that is a finding of fact that there was an appearance of impropriety. He said there's an appearance of impropriety. Now, what's the law when there's an appearance of impropriety? Instead, we determine whether the remedy fashioned by the trial court for this undisputed finding of a significant appearance of impropriety was improper, as contended by the appellates. And that's why it's important that the state they didn't disagree that there was an appearance of impropriety, which was a very stupid thing on their part. They should have said, no, we think that he's crazy for coming up with that, even though even though everyone saw it, but at least he disputed it. And we conclude that it was, and therefore reverse the trial court's denial of the appellate's motion to disqualify. We affirm, however, the appellant's motion to dismiss the indictment. We affirm the denial of the appellate's motion to dismiss the indictment. So the court said, I'm not dismissing the indictment. That part we affirm, but we reverse him with respect to the fact that he said Fani Willis and her team can stay on here. And then they go through the whole history here. I don't want to go through every line by line on this thing. This is exactly what happened. Hopefully by now you're all familiar with the underlying facts as to what went down here. And they say that on August 14, 2023, Willis secured the RICO indictment, and we go through the whole facts here. The trial court, blah, 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 blah. She hires Nathan Wade. Very detailed. Very, very detailed. Going on and on about the different trips that they had and the relationship they had and all the other good stuff, which were all findings. They're going to Belize. They're going on to Napa Valley. And who's spending what on the money, and on and on. I really care much more about their findings as they relate to the law. The DA and Wade testified these expenditures were not meant as gifts, not designed to benefit the district attorney. Both testified the DA regularly reimbursed Wade. These are factual stuff, so we're going to change this to green. That she regularly reimbursed Wade in cash and have not reimbursed the district attorney covered a comparable related expense. For example, DA testified that she reimbursed Wade in cash the Aruba trip, which she estimated cost around $2,000, and she gave him money for both cruises. All right, fine. She goes through a whole blah 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 explanation and how she pulled out all the cash. We all saw the testimony of that. She said she reimbursed Wade for the entirety of the Belize trip, and then she paid for the Napa Valley excursions. And frankly, there's no way to refute her. How can you say for sure? It sounds sus, but you can't say for sure that it's not true. While Wade could have bought meals in 2020, which told him more than $100, she would also regularly pay for his meals. But this reimbursement practice may be unusual and lack documented corroboration. That's understandably concerning. Now, this we're starting to get into like a little bit of like a legal analysis here. We see stuff like that. That's kind of with respect to, is this an appearance of impropriety? Yeah, that's kind of concerning. But it withstood direct contradiction because you don't know. No one was able to say that's a lie. We could just be like, come on. It's got that odor of mendacity. It stinks to high heaven. No one really believes you. But there's no one here to directly attest that it's not true. There's corroborated other evidence, and was not so incredible as being inherently unbelievable. Okay. However, the DA herself acknowledged no ledger exists. other than a best guesstimate. This is her own admission on the facts. I didn't really have any. She could have claimed that there was some ledger and she lost her ledger, but we were just guessing. So there's no way to be sure it was split completely evenly, and the DA may well have received the net benefit of several $100s. Despite this, after considering all the surrounding circumstances, the court finds that the evidence did not establish the DA's receipt of a material financial benefits. This was what, as a result of a decision to hire and engage in a romantic relationship with Wade. So that was what McAfee said at the lower court. Simply put, defendants had not presented sufficient evidence indicating expenses were not roughly divided evenly, or the DA was or currently remains greatly and pecuniarily interested. That she's like, oh, I'm doing this for the money. I'm doing it for the money. You don't really have evidence of that. In addition, much more important, the court finds, based largely on the district attorney's testimony, that the evidence demonstrated the financial gain flowing from relationship with Wade was not a motivating factor for her to indict and prosecute the case. She wasn't in this case for the money that she was giving her boyfriend. While a general motive for more income can never be disregarded entirely, the DA was not financially destitute throughout the time or any great need, as she testified the salary exceeds $200,000 per year without any indication of excessive expenses or debts. Similarly, the court further finds the defendants have failed to demonstrate that the DA's conduct has impacted or influenced the case to the defendant's detriment. While prejudice is not required an element for disqualification, it's relevant to considerations of due process and defendants request a remedy of complete dismissal. Defendants argue that the financial arrangement created an incentive to prolong the case, but in fact, there's no indication that the DA is interested in delaying anything. On the record, quite contrary. Before the relationship came to light, the state requested the trial begin less than 6 months after the indictment, so this is a factual finding in her favor, saying she's not trying to drag this out. That's a fair point. That's a fair point. If she wants to drag it out, she wants this case going for years. She's the one who wanted to speed the trial along. Soon thereafter, the state opposed severance of the objecting defendants who did not demand the statutory right to a speedy trial, meaning they want to get them done too. So these are factors that were weighing in Fani's favor to say that she's not trying to drag it out to bilk more money out of the state on behalf of her boyfriend. The state argued they only wanted to try the case once. The state amended its proposal timeline in November 2023 to request the trial commence less than 1 year after the return of the indictment. And even before the indictment, the DA approved a grand jury presentment that included fewer defendants. So the DA is not in any way acting in conformance with the theory that she arranged a financial scheme to enrich herself, because if it was a financial scheme to enrich herself, she would be dragging this out. You run out the clock as long as you can to raise more money. Without sufficient evidence that DA acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, the defendant's claims of an actual conflict must be denied. And I thought that was a reasonable conclusion. This finding by no means an indication that the court condones the tremendous lapse of judgment or the unprofessional manner of the DA's testimony during the evidentiary hearing. Rather, it's the undersigned's opinion that Georgia law does not permit the finding of an actual conflict for simply making bad choices. And it's trial court's duty to confine itself to relevant issues. Well, now, this is the court continuing. Now, this is the appellate court talk now. Although the trial court found insufficient evidence of an actual conflict of interest, there's another conclusion they had, which is the record made at the evidentiary hearing established that the DA's prosecution is encumbered by an appearance of impropriety. And this is critical. This appearance is not created by mere status alone, but because of specific conduct and impacts more than a mere nebulous public interest, because it concerns a public prosecutor, even if the romantic relationship began after Wade's initial contract in November 2021. So, okay, you didn't hire him for that. She chose to continue supervising and paying Wade while maintaining such a relationship. She could have said, I'm handing you off to someone else. Make a little wall there. She further allowed the regular and loose exchange of money between them without any exact or verifiable measure of reconciliation. Once you're in that situation, don't you think it would have been prudent? Don't you think it would have made sense that now that you're having a relationship with him that, hey, you should really be keeping very close track of your financial records because people might be asking questions? This lack of confirmed financial split creates a possible appearance that the DA benefited, albeit not materially, from a contract whose award lay solely within her purview and policing. So that's part of your appearance of impropriety. Most importantly, were the case allowed to proceed unchanged, the prima facie concerns raised by the defendants would persist. As the DA testified, a relationship with Wade has only cemented after these motions and is stronger than ever. Wade's patently unpersuasive explanation for the inaccurate interrogatories he submitted in his pending divorce, where he said that he hadn't engaged in a romantic relationship or sexual relationship with anyone since his divorce, which was patently a lie, and that was exposed during the hearing. That indicates a willingness on his part to wrongly conceal his relationship with the DA. And he's willing to lie under oath to conceal that relationship. As the case moves forward, reasonable members of the public could easily be left to wonder whether the financial exchanges have continued. A lot of people are going to say, yeah, I think they're still playing around. There's still some hanky-panky there. Or even whether the romantic relationship has resumed. Put differently, an outsider could reasonably think that that Fani Willis is not exercising her independent professional judgment totally free of any compromising influences. As long as Wade remains in the case, this unnecessary perception will persist. The testimony introduced that of the DA and Wade did not put these concerns to rest. During the argument, defendants' focus largely pivoted from the financial concerns to disproving the testimony of the DA, namely that her romantic relationship actually predated November 2021 hiring of Wade. On that front, the court makes a few brief observations. And this is where he got me upset. First, the court finds itself unable to place any stock in the testimony of Terrence Bradley. Now, you might remember Terrence Bradley, who basically took one story and then changed another, and there was a whole thing. Is he pleading the fifth, and is this confidential, and is attorney-client privilege, and where's attorney-client privilege attached? And I don't remember saying this, and I don't know this, and that text is, I don't know what that text means, and yeah, I sent you this text, and I don't remember, and I don't remember, and I don't remember, and all this other weird stuff. His inconsistencies, demeanor, and general non-responsive answers left far too brittle a foundation upon which to build any conclusions. No, there's a lot of conclusions you could have drawn. While prior inconsistent statements can be considered substantive evidence under Georgia law, Bradley's impeachment by text message did not establish the basis for which he claimed such sweeping knowledge of Wade's personal affairs. In addition, while the testimony of Robin Yeardy raised doubts about the state's assertions, she was the first one who testified and said, oh yeah, Fani told me she's like going hot and heavy with Nathan Wade. It ultimately lacked context and detail. Even after considering the proffered cell phone testimony from defendant Trump, thousands of text messages, thousands and thousands of text messages, phone calls, cell phone data usage showing that he's over there at 3 o'clock in the morning. Even that, along with the entirety of the other evidence, neither side was able to conclusively establish by positive evidence when the relationship evolved into a romantic one. This, I think, was purposefully blinding himself. He's coming over there at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, come on. Come on. Come on. And they're not willing to share the text messages. This is one of the things I brought up at the time, that I was like, hey, you know, if you want to show that these text messages are really innocuous, if they really are innocuous, why not share them with the court? So here you go. Here they are. You'll see. Read the text message. It says on it, we need to look into this issue. We should, be prepared for a media onslaught. Business talk. That's what, if it's really so innocuous, maybe a joke here and there, but it's like, that it's not that he's not calling her, shorty. It's it's really very easy. It's very easy. Just show the text messages. That'll prove it. Definitively, dispositively. And what the court was, however, an odor of mendacity remains. The court is not under an obligation to ferret out every instance of political dishonesty from each witness, defendant, even ever presented in open court. Yet, reasonable questions about whether Willis and her hand-selected lead Special Assistant Attorney Wade testified untruthfully about the timing of the relationship further underpin the finding of an appearance of impropriety and need to make proportional efforts to cure it. This is all stuff that came from findings that Judge McAfee made. Now, and this is the court still assessing. Now this part, when you see the formatting, is that it's closer to the margin. That's the appellate court talking. It then rejected dismissal, indictment, and disqualification of D.A. Willis and her office based upon the following reasoning. Ultimately, dismissal indictment is not the appropriate remedy to adequately dissipate the financial cloud of impropriety. There's not been a showing defendant's due process rights have been violated, nor is disqualification of constitutional officer necessary when less drastic and sufficiently remedial option is available, i.e. DEA selection of whether Wade withdraw or she would refer the case. Now, this is where the court starts, the appellate court starts weighing in with what they think the law should be in this scenario. The appellants contend that the trial court failure to disqualify Willis and her office was erroneous in light of the trial court's finding on the record established that the prosecution is either encumbered by a significant appearance of impropriety. You got a significant appearance of impropriety, you can't fix it just by removing Wade. That's what the appellants are saying. In the appellant's view, the trial court's forward-looking remedy did not cure the already existing appearance of impropriety and the odor of mendacity found by the trial court. You found an odor of mendacity, you didn't fix it, though. Based upon the fact findings of the trial court in its order and the state's failure to cross-appeal, the trial court's finding of a significant appearance of impropriety, we agree. Meaning, they didn't even argue about this whole odor mendacity thing. The state never even countered that. So we think that there is a significant appearance of impropriety. We agree. As our consideration of the appearance of impropriety is limited to the remedy fashioned by the trial court, we turn to Georgia law on this issue. While the parties advocate for diametrically opposed bright-line rules, disqualification of the district attorney's office can never result from an appearance of impropriety, or disqualification should always result when the elected district attorney engages in activities that raise the appearance of impropriety. So each side has completely opposite perspectives. One says whenever there's appearance of impropriety, the defendants are saying whenever there's an appearance of impropriety, get rid of the DA. The DA's office is saying no matter how bad an appearance of impropriety, you cannot remove a DA just because of an appearance of impropriety. Completely opposite starting points that they're arguing for here. It's what the law is. But Georgia law requires neither of those extreme perspectives as a matter of course. Instead, we have to examine the particular facts and circumstances of each case while keeping some general principles in mind. So what are these principles? First, the court's ruling on a motion to disqualify is reviewed for an abuse of discretion. So let's go through the trial court, see if there's abuse of discretion. Were you like acting in a retarded way, trial judge? And second, the issue of attorney disqualification is viewed as a continuum. Citing from Blumenfeld v. Borenstein, at one end of the scale where disqualification is always justified and indeed mandated, even when balanced against clients' rights to an attorney of choice, is the appearance of impropriety coupled with the conflict of interest or jeopardy to a client's confidences. In these instances, it is clear that disqualification is necessary. So when you have that marriage between an appearance of impropriety and a conflict of interest, or the client's confidence has been breached, meaning you're sharing stuff about the client that you're not supposed to be sharing, then disqualification is necessary to protect the client. So if an attorney basically goes around talking about their own client, and there's appearance of impropriety, that's when you're protecting the client from a rogue attorney. Somewhere in the middle of the continuum is the appearance of impropriety based on the conduct on the part of the attorney. As discussed above, this generally has been found insufficient to outweigh the client's interest in counsel of choice. Because understand here, the DA is the counsel of choice, right? So the people elected Fani Willis to oversee and help take care of this situation. So she's the counsel of choice. So trying to protect the people from the people are the client, right? Are you understanding that the people here are the client? So this is probably so because absent danger of client, the nebulous interest of the public at large in the propriety of the bar is not weighty enough to justify disqualification. Finally, the opposite end of the continuum is the appearance of impropriety based not on conduct but on status alone, which is insufficient. Here, we have to address the remedy of the context of significant appearance of impropriety caused by the conduct of a public prosecutor. In our criminal justice system, the DA represents the people of the state in prosecuting individuals who have been charged with violating our state's laws. So you're representing we, the people. You're representing the people. The responsibility of a public prosecutor differs from the usual advocate. Her duty is to seek justice, not merely to convict. Yeah. All right. But it is technically what they're supposed to be doing. The special duty exists because the prosecutor represents the sovereign and should exercise restraint and discretionary exercise of her governmental powers. Therefore, the DA is more than an advocate for one party. It has additional professional responsibilities as public prosecutor to make decisions in the public interest. So her duty is to act in the public interest, not in her self-interest. And in that sense, she has broad discretion in making decisions. These considerations take this case out of the continuing cases involving appearance of impropriety in connection with the conduct of private counsel. After carefully considering the trial court's findings in its order, we conclude that it erred by failing to disqualify Willis and her office. The remedy crafted by the trial courts to prevent an ongoing appearance of impropriety did nothing to address the appearance of impropriety that existed at times when DA Willis was exercising her broad pretrial discretion about who to prosecute and what charges to bring. This never would have been brought. While we recognize an appearance of impropriety generally is not enough to support disqualification, this is the rare case in which disqualification is mandated and no other remedy will suffice to restore public confidence in the integrity of these proceedings because everyone saw how ugly this thing was. This was just an embarrassment. This was a humiliation for the state. Accordingly, we reverse the trial court's denial of the appellate's motion to disqualify DA Willis in her office. We're reversing the trial court when they moved to disqualify her office, as we could conclude that the elected district attorney is wholly disqualified from the case. The assistant district attorneys, which is her office, whose only power to prosecute a case derived from the constitutional authority of the district attorney who appointed them, have no authority to proceed. And then they go into the efforts to dismiss the indictment. And they explain why they're not going to dismiss the indictment, specifically saying it's used only sparingly for unlawful government conduct. There's nothing unlawful here. And while this is the rare case in which Willis and her office must be disqualified because of the impropriety, we can't say that it supports the imposition of the extreme sanction of dismissal of indictment under the appropriate standard. So there you go. There's a 10-page dissent here from Judge Land that I don't care about. So I'm not reading it. I don't care. I don't care what he wrote. So it was roughly 9 months ago, specifically March 15, 2024, when yours truly was covering this decision for the first time. Not the DA out. Left unexplored, therefore, is how the examples of forensic misconduct can manifest, such as whether statements that stop short of common sense. Now is something that is definitely an issue that the appellate court is going to have to address. So this is the part I want to get to about how, we're going after justice and all that she's doing. So all the stuff where she's making these appearances and she's writing her book, she's doing all this stuff where she's making. Oh, a second. I think that a lot of people are currently calling Republicans that are in support of regime changes, funding wars, spending offshore and pork rhinos. Yes, this is true, prospering woman. However, saying that we shouldn't have a debt ceiling, that we need to have a debt ceiling, that's not looking for pork, right? That's the opposite of looking for pork. That's saying we're not spending. So he's saying, I want to have a debt ceiling. And Trump is saying, I don't want to have a debt ceiling. Now, in theory, I've heard arguments which could explain why Trump, when someone says, I don't want to have a debt ceiling, to me, that sounds like rhino talk, right? You want to be able to spend as much as you want, no ceiling on how much debt we can have. There's just no limit to how much debt we can have. That sounds like rhino talk. And that's what Trump is asking for. Chip Roy's trying to stand in his way. And for standing in his way, people are calling Chip Roy a rhino. That is retarded. That doesn't make any sense at all. That's my point. That Trump is taking the more rhino type of position. Chip Roy is trying to stand in his way from taking that position, saying, I don't want you having unlimited spending. And everyone's like, oh, you're standing in the way of Trump. You're a rhino. I'm like, what the hell is that? That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense at all. I'm going to come back to this soon. Do you know why Biden and Harris are in the White House now? I do not. I didn't even know that they were there. I mean, he lives there, so. How do you get rid of the debt ceiling and have Doge? I don't understand. Isn't the point to Doge to be like, we're going to dial back our spending? In which case, why are you so worried about the debt ceiling? Why are you so worried about all the savings that you build in there is going to give you that much more room under the debt ceiling? And so it's so confusing to me. But I'm going to try to walk you through the different arguments that people are putting forward when I wrap up over here, which is going to be soon. And this is what some people are saying, that the debt ceiling is a bargaining chip for defendants. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. And I'm not dismissing that claim. It's a fair, it's a reasonable, it's an argument that needs to be considered at the very least. I'm not just dismissing and saying that's crap. I definitely don't think that's crap. That doesn't mean it's necessarily also correct. We'll talk about it soon. I'm just going to wrap up over here. All these comments about how, we're going after justice and all that other stuff. I don't find that there's anything that was really rise to a level of that being forensic misconduct. But here he makes a finding of fact, which could be very beneficial on appeal. This is what I'm talking about, because I started focusing on the findings of fact that he made. I was reading through this decision, and when I was reading through this decision, I was screaming, furious at McAfee for basically chickening out of doing what he had to do in this scenario, because I did feel he chickened out. But I basically said, even though he chickened out, there were certain things he put into this decision which were potentially beneficial for Trump and the co-defendants, because there were findings of fact that later on can help Trump. He makes a very important finding of fact. And the finding of fact cannot be overturned, which means that this now is something that is definitely an issue that the appellate court is going to have to address and make a ruling on, which will now become the law of the land in Georgia until it's overturned. Now, this one he's talking about, I was going through, or at least in this area of Georgia, depending on how far in the court it ends up going. And that is this issue that he's coming to right here. In these public and televised comments, the district attorney complained, and this part was not actually the part. This is not really the part I should have shown you. I want to move to 210 because that was the forensic evidence. Later on, it gets the appearance. When I get to the part where he's talking about appearance of impropriety, and I was like, here are findings of fact that are likely going to help him at the appellate court. And time may well have a right for an order preventing the state from mentioning the case in any public forum. Meaning, she really should shut up to prevent prejudicial pre-trial publicity, but that's not before me right now. That motion isn't before me right now. Any motion to compel her to shut her freaking big fat fanny mouth. Now, but I just want you to understand what he wrote here and what I believe is a grave error on his part. Is this it? No, it's. We're talking about this forensic misconduct and whether that requires. How do I get into the whole forensic misconduct thing? Because that ended up not being something that they focused on. It was 210. Could potentially be very beneficial to the defendants, and it opens forensic misconduct. Because to me, that was a very interesting argument, which I don't think I'm sure you're probably going to watch several people talk about this, and I don't know how much people are going to focus on the forensic misconduct because everyone is all fixated on the appearance of impropriety and the conflict of interest that's going on here. But the forensic misconduct to me is something that he made a finding of fact there. Made a finding of fact which could potentially be very beneficial to the defendants, and it opens a doorway for them to be it opens a doorway for them to
spit it out, Joey.
For an appellate court to actually overturn it.
Spit it out.
It does. All right, let's go back up. Ultimate decision that he gave here, because I don't have a lot of time left. So I'm going to scroll down to the ultimate decision here. Statutory and county provisions, mendacity. But he refers to there being an odor of mendacity when he's assessing the appearance of impropriety. The actual language that he uses is, as he writes here, however, an odor of mendacity remains. When he goes through the entire thing here, the relationship and the whole perspective of the appearance of impropriety. It comes to, with these principles in mind, the court finds that the record made at the evidentiary hearing established the district attorney's prosecution is encumbered by an appearance of impropriety. This appearance not created by mere status alone, but comes because of specific conduct that impacts more than a mere nebulous public interest because of concerns of public prosecutor.
And we see that this is exactly the language. This is the findings of fact that the court fixated on.
But all his findings there that he makes along the way are basically things that were admitted by the district attorney. Things admitted by the district attorney. And he's like, I don't know any more than that. I don't have enough evidence to disprove what she said. That's essentially what he comes back to. I don't have any enough evidence to disprove her claims, no matter how unbelievably incredible they are. And he says, but nor would the finding of an appearance of impropriety on the part of the district attorney herself, in contrast to an actual conflict, necessarily reflect the disqualification of the entire Fulton County District Attorney's Office. So he says, when it comes to conflict of interest, we have to remove the entire office. But he says here that the finding of appearance of impropriety on the part of the district attorney herself, in contrast to an actual conflict, would not necessarily result in disqualification of the entire Fulton County District Attorney's Office. District Attorney McLaughlin was absolutely disqualified due to personal interest in the prosecution. As a result, the assistant district attorneys appointed by the DA lacked any authority to proceed. McLaughlin did not address an appearance standard and made a point to limit the total disqualification to instances of absolute disqualification. When the appearance of conflict exists, only the affected prosecutor, be they elected or appointed, is affected. So if I remove them for conflict of interest, I have to take out the entire office. If I remove them for appearance of impropriety, in that case, only the affected prosecutor, whether they're elected or appointed, is the one affected.
And that's really where he was reversed on this part here. That's a significant part because the appellate court said no. If you're removing a DA for appearance of impropriety, you have to take out the office as well, because you have the appearance of impropriety that's mirrored here, that's married with other flaws as well, because appearance of impropriety alone would not be enough to knock them out. And that's really, I guess, the most significant part, which will be interesting to see if the Supreme Court of the state of Georgia, which is the highest court in the state, ends up picking this up. That's the one area that, in theory, they could reverse this appellate court on? In theory, they could. Pragmatically, I would. My bet is I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb and say I'm going to make a bet and say they're not going to pick this up. And the reason I think they're not going to pick this up is because politically, right now, the gods are favoring Trump, and that plays a role as to like, do we want to touch this case or not? And right now, the wheel has spun in Trump's favor. And seeing as how the wheel is spun in Trump's favor, I don't think that the appellate court, the Supreme Court of Georgia, is going to pick this case up and say, no, we're going after Trump. It just seems like politically suicidal. So I expect that even though Fani Willis has filed an appeal, Ashley Merchant went on Megyn Kelly today and said that an notice of appeal was filed by Fani Willis's office. I do not expect the Supreme Court of the state of Georgia to accept to give them an opportunity to appeal it. They're gonna be like, we're not interested in this case. It's done. So I think that this is probably it. I mean, the chances are very, very high that no one's going to pick this case up. Would you want to go up against Trump right now? Would you? I don't think so. This is not the right time. You have to know there's an ancient phrase which goes "Ta'ala be'idna sagidle," a fox in his day, things are good for him. Meaning, no matter how scurrilous a creature is, whether or not you think of him as being something like that's scurrilous, but even a creature who is the bane of society, when things are going well for them, you don't try messing with them during that period. So even those who would look at Trump with disdain probably would be hesitant to say, this is where I'm going to make my stand. This is it right here. Really? Okay. I don't think it's going to happen. All right. Let's get into the political infighting here with the Democrats. I need to address something with Dom Mannion. Dom Mannion. Joe, please promote Slotty Pie's hat modeling it and asking. So this is for you, Dom, my friend Dom Mannion, my lifelong buddy Dom Mannion here. I just gotta say, yesterday I noticed in Rumble some people are speculating that I'm intentionally missing your stuff. I'm intentionally bypassing your chats. That is definitely, I want to be clear. I'm telling you and I'm not joking around at all. I have never, ever intentionally missed anything that you said. If I did miss something, I apologize. And I never would just skip out on anything that you say. And all the stuff I make about our ongoing feud is said in jest. And I should say, he says, Joe, please promote Slotty Pie's hat modeling at HGT. What is this? What is hot? Entropy Nomad says, Joe, don't read this rant. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. You filthy animal. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. What is this? What am I looking at here? This is the link that Dom Mannion shared with me. In his link. We'll be replaying Rumble rant clips on his Rumble at art. This is what he's saying to me here. We'll be playing Rumble rant clips on his Rumble at HTTPS Rumble Real Patriots Party. All right. Is this like mocking me of all like the rants that I've missed? I don't intentionally miss anything. John Reb says, Miss Willis get kicked off in the Fanny, and no, I'm not going to hit you with a deeply emotional rant in the beginning of the night. I lied. Safe journeys, Lorex. You bastard. Indeed, safe journeys, Lorex. What else did I miss from you? There's this one. Slidey Pie's hat modeling. This is what he shared with me. This is Slidey Pie's hat modeling. I don't know. Let's see what we got. This is not going to help my mood.
Hey guys, Slidey Pie here. I'm outside. I'm so sad. Jeff from Legal Vices. If any of you
I'm watching this right now, and it's making me literally miss smoking.
that watch Legal Vices, Jeff, he died yesterday. Today is Monday. Can't remember the date. I don't know whether it's the 16th or I don't know, but whatever. He died yesterday. And I'm just so sad. You know,
Is this
I
what?
watched him.
Is
from
this what you were
Ohio
asking me to
House.
watch?
That trial was going on because Nick Rekieta had a bunch of people on, lawyers and stuff. And Legal Vices is a lawyer, was a lawyer. And I think I watched him on Friday or Thursday. And he was talking about how he's going to do the Maritime Monday again because he's a maritime lawyer in Korea. He lives in Korea. He's been living there for like 35 years. He's actually an American, but he grew up in Utah and he moved to Korea 35 years ago. Married a woman, has one son who's probably in his 20s. I think Legal Vices was Jeff was probably about 54, and he died.
All right, this is going to make me sad. This is going to make me sad, and it's going to make me want to smoke. Like I'm already wanting to smoke. So instead, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to put the link to this in the description. If you want to watch the rest of her breakdown as to the whole Legal Vices thing, it's really just going to make me sad. And I'm not, and yeah, I can't. You're heading up Slidey Pie's marketing team? All right. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a link in my description. I'm going to do it in YouTube. To see Slidey Pie discussing Lorax. Legal Vices. There you go. And you guys can just find it there. I think that's fair. I can't. Not tonight. Denise says, I love Trump, but I disagree with his fight with Chip. I agree with Chip on the spending. It needs to stop. All right. We'll talk about Chip in a few. There's other things that I want to get to. I'm definitely going to spend time talking about this. First, let's talk about Dan Crenshaw. Dan Crenshaw decided he wanted to pick a fight. He wanted to pick a fight with everyone who was critiquing him. With everyone. Where was it? First, he goes after my friend here. I don't know if this was first. My friend Nick Sorter. So I shared this out yesterday. New Nick Sorter, who I've been on spaces with him. I like him. He's a good guy. Said DC sources tell me that Dan Crenshaw is spearheading the effort to get a pay raise for Congress. Dan Crenshaw took massive offense at this. Yeah, he whined that members of Congress haven't had a pay raise since 2009. Yeah, or maybe you're a effing lying piece of... You're a freaking congressman. He's losing it. Dan Crenshaw is losing it. Because I'm not even on the yes list for the whip team. Never have been. But hey, whatever gets you pathetic bottom feeders, your clickbait effing incels. Oh my God. Oh my God. Danny boy. Danny boy. Now, Danny's a rhino. Don't get me wrong. Danny's definitely a rhino. And he started with the wrong guy. I'm not talking about Dan. I'm not talking about Nick Sorter, which you shouldn't have started with him. But this was Nick's response to him. Hey, I Patch McCain. You should try debunking some of my claims instead of having an emotional breakdown and whining to Elon about me. Because Elon had retweeted Nick Sorter, and said, I love you, Elon, but you need to take 5 seconds to check your sources before highlighting bottom feeders looking for clicks. So Nick says, hey, I Patch McCain, you should try debunking some of my claims instead of having an emotional breakdown and whining to Elon about me. Why were you working behind the scenes to slip through pay raises for Congress, Dan Crenshaw, Texas? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. The fighting. Nick's saying, congratulations to deep state pirate Dan Crenshaw for having top performing stock portfolios in Congress. How are you doing it? What's the secret, Dan? What's the secret, Dan? Dan, what an embarrassment Dan is. What an embarrassment. But there was more. There's more because that wasn't the only fight he was having. Where was it? Why don't I see it here? Hold on a second. Let me find it. I don't know why I'm not seeing it here. That's not it. That's not it. I know I saved this. I know I saved this one. Do a quick. That's it. Oh, so here it was. After he said that, here it is. Okay, I knew I had it here somewhere. Okay, after he said that, he said, yeah, or maybe. This is what Dan Crenshaw had written to Nick Sorter. Maybe you're an effing lying piece of crap because I'm not even on the yes list of the whip team, never have been. But hey, whatever gets you pathetic bottom feeders, your clickbait, effing incels. He seems so angry. It's a cat turd who has a massive following. If you're not an X, you may not know just how big Cat Turd is. 3 million followers, and he's like ultra. He's the I would say he's the longest running multi-million follower account. Longest running Trump supporter with a multi-million follower account. Okay. He's been supporting Trump since 2016. Like diehard Trump supporter since 2016, Cat Turd. So he's an author who runs a radio show. He runs a podcast also. And everyone, here's the thing also, everyone knows his name. I don't know his name. You guys probably do know his name. I don't know his name. Do you guys know his name? His real name, Cat's Herd? But he is an author who everyone knows. But if you ever see those memes with a cat, like sort of, and with glasses, sort of like bobbing his head, that's all a reference to Cat's Herd. Anytime you see a meme like that, that's all a reference to Cat's Herd. He's really, really well known. See, he said, yeah, get it right. Dan Crenshaw is the America Last, Ukraine First war pig who doesn't need a raise because of all the money he makes when he miraculously becomes a stock expert since joining Congress. This is what Catturd wrote in response to Dan Crenshaw. And Dan Crenshaw was like, oh, okay. You're coming at me, Catturd? Time for me to come after you. And oh my God, this does not go well for Dan. It doesn't go well for him. No. Doesn't go well. Anonymous coward like Catturd talking crap without any evidence. I'm used to it. Sorry. I was the guy fighting the wars that little bitches like you would never dare to. One of us has actually served this country and continues to, while losers like you make money being trolls on social media. I live in Atascocita, just outside Houston. If you think I'm rich, you're an effing idiot. The people getting rich off politics are the influencers like Catturd selling their platforms to the highest bidder. Sorry to break it to you all. That's the truth. That's what this guy wrote. Oh, no. So you're saying you're just some coward, no-name person that's you're anonymous, so no one knows who the hell you are. You're a coward. I'm a war hero, and that you just been showing up to be some influencer to make money, and whoever buys your opinion will basically get your love. That's essentially what Dan Crenshaw is saying. That didn't go well for him. No, that did not go well, because Catturd's response were, number one, I'm an Army vet. 2, I haven't been anonymous for years. There's literally a picture of me on my profile page, and I do public events all the time and have a daily podcast. 3, your stock trades are public record, and you're also a millionaire. You're not very good at this, are you? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh my God! Pow, 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 pow. Get him, Catturd. Oh, get him. Yeah. So, fun times. Nick Sorter and Catturd going after Dan Crenshaw. This is Catturd here, in case you haven't seen him. This is him right here. But anyway, Dan Crenshaw is becoming the next Adam Kinzinger. It's not like, it's really embarrassing. It's really embarrassing because there was so much hope for him. I think he sold his soul. I think he sold out. I think he's a sellout because he used to sound very based. He really did. I remember him sounding based. 6 years ago, he sounded really based. He doesn't talk like that anymore. All right. So that's one fight that's been going on. In case you think that these fights are only just between Republicans against each other. No. There's infighting going on with Democrats also. Joe Biden is trying to take down Nancy Pelosi, trying to ruin her life. Oh my God, there's so much infighting. As Jesse Waters reports.
Biden doesn't care as much about being president. He cares more about getting revenge against the coup leaders. Joe just threw a hand grenade at Nancy Pelosi while she's stuck in a hospital bed in Germany.
I don't know how you look your constituents in the eye and know because the job they gave you an inside track to make more money. I think we should be changing the law that we have to, but we abide by at the federal level, that nobody in the Congress should be able to make money in the stock market while they're in the Congress.
Oh my God. You hypocritical old bat. You friggin' hypocritical old bat. You have 1 month from today. It's now December 20th here on the East Coast. You have literally 1 month left in a 6-decade-long friggin' career inside DC, where you have done peddling, influence peddling, and God knows what other else insider stock trading. You're down to your last freaking month. And you come out here and basically say, oh yeah, all these people here, I don't know why do we allow this insider trading. Oh my God, you sold our country out. You crooked, disgusting, awful man. And the only reason I think it's funny is because there's no question his motivation here is he's picturing Nancy in his brain. Whatever is left is of his brain has a visual of Nancy in his head as he's saying this. There's no question that that's what this is. This is vindictive. This is like... This is like, oh, let me feed the populist narrative of we have to stop Congress from engaging in insider trade. Oh my God. Oh my God. The guy it's like, why do we allow Congress to make money off of their position? Oh, as if this is like the king of making money off of his position. Doing it for 6 decades and ultimately spending the last, 10 years peddling influence in Washington, saying, why should Congress be allowed to make money off of their position?
Biden didn't want to ban Congress from insider trading during his entire 50-year career in D.C. But a month before he leaves, he gives Nancy a little gift. This isn't about stopping corruption. It's about getting retribution. We asked the White House if the president has called Nancy to check in on her after she broke her hip in Belgium. We haven't heard back. So if Nancy wants to get rich in the House, she might have to do it the old-fashioned way, peddling influence like the big guy.
There you go. There you go. So everyone's infighting. Don't think it's just the Republican Party. What else we got? Who else is infighting? Who else do I have here that's infighting? Oh, yeah. We got Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham announcing that he's going to oppose the appointment of RFK Jr. That's the reports coming out today, December 19th, that he's going to oppose RFK Jr. This is the guy Trump threw his arm around him. Oh, such a good guy. Such a good guy. Chicago Race tweeting out that Lindsey Graham says he's a no vote on RFK. So you folks in South Carolina know exactly what to do. Would you support a primary challenge of Lindsey Graham by Nancy Mace for his seat? I sure as hell would. I sure as heck would. This is a guy we really need to. This is someone I can totally get on board. He is your classic rhino. Classic rhino. Here's him justifying the whole Ukraine thing. Why it is that Ukraine is such an important thing to America. You want to know why Ukraine is such an important thing? Because it can help us get rich.
Ukraine is still standing. This war is about money. Ukraine is still standing. This war is about money. People don't talk much about it. But you know the richest country in all of Europe for rare earth minerals is Ukraine. $2 to $7 trillion worth of minerals that are rare earth minerals, very relevant to the 21st century. Ukraine's ready to do a deal with us, not the Russians. So it's in our interest to make sure that Russia doesn't take over the place. It's the breadbasket of really the developing world. 50% of all the food going to Africa comes out of Ukraine. We can make.
Imagine if all that food was coming here. You capitalist pig.
Money and have an economic relationship with Ukraine that'd be very beneficial to us with peace. So Donald Trump's going to do a deal to get our money back, to enrich ourselves with rare earth minerals, a good deal for Ukraine and us. And he's going to bring peace. And Biden's been a disaster when it comes to containing bad guys. Ukraine.
So there you go. There you go. There's the rhino telling you why it is that we're defending. Why are we defending Ukraine? Because we want to get rich off of them. Oh God. All right. So to understand what's happening in this last fight here between Chip Roy and Trump, you need to understand a little bit about what's been unfolding in Congress over the last 48 hours. So we're nearing the end of the budget that was approved by Congress that's supposed to die today, December 20th. Meaning shutdown coming. A government shutdown coming. Essential folks are still taken care of. If you're dependent on resources, military and things like that, first and foremost, military gets paid, I think, on the 15th and 30th. They've already been paid. You know, there's all these threats coming from the left of like, oh, here's the Republicans screwing over veterans right before Christmas. They're not noticing anything. And they wouldn't notice anything until December 30th. And historically, even when there's a shutdown, essential services still get paid. So, and vets still get paid. So that's just this red herring to try and make Republicans look like they're monsters, Grinch, whatever, and that they're terribly evil people. Never let their ridiculous gaslighting affect you. You should just look at it and laugh. But a shutdown has been impending. Ineffective Mike Johnson, who basically waits to the last minute to do everything, came out and basically with this new bipartisan proposal yesterday, 1,500 pages, that they're like, vote on this now, and had all sorts of pork fit. Like, it's literally this. It's like this thick. It's ginormous. This is not even enough. It's probably like out here. It's crazy. So, and it has all sorts of terrible things in there for I mean, some of the things they have in there is that you can't refer to someone who's charged as being a criminal defendant, that they have to refer to them as being a judicially involved person. Because that just is a negative stereotype. It's got one woke thing after another, budgeting millions of dollars for one ridiculous excess after another. It was an utter disaster. I went through it yesterday. I'm not going to repeat myself on it. The internet went nuts, specifically over on X. Everyone was going crazy that Congress has to kill the bill. And likely out of response to that, it was ginned up. I'm not going to kid you. It was ginned up by Elon Musk, who was screaming nuts about it. Vivek was going nuts about it. And the internet started going nuts about it. And the bill died. Fortunately, that's a great thing. Today, the GOP introduced a slim down bill. Now, one of the things you need to understand is this concept of there being a debt ceiling. A debt ceiling basically is how much money is the United States of America allowed to borrow to cover its expenses. That's what when they're talking about a debt ceiling, that's what they're talking about. I know that this is, when you talk about money, for a lot of people, it gets very confusing and everything gets very blurry and it feels daunting. So I want to try and simplify it for you so you can better understand it. So when they talk about a debt ceiling, this is how much money, because Congress is not allowed to just borrow money. The government cannot just borrow money. Congress has to approve and say you're allowed to borrow money. Authorize the United States of America to borrow money. Otherwise, there's no authority for them to take out a loan. Now, when you're working at a budget deficit, in order to do that, you have to borrow more money, and borrow more money, and borrow more money, because we're not living within our means. We have X number of dollars that come in tax revenue, and the anticipated budget for what we're going to be spending is greater than X. So where do you make up that shortfall? Well, we're borrowing it. That's why the deficit keeps going up. Well, back in 2023, Democrats were like, we don't have to deal with this whole headache of continually having to borrow money. So they said there's no debt ceiling, all the way through June 30th of 2025. So as of today, there is no debt ceiling, which means as of today, the government is allowed to borrow whatever the hell they feel like borrowing. They can just borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow. Okay. So now you understand what the debt ceiling is and where we are at today. Okay? Now, so coming into today, we had a bill that was thrown out there as to like what our budget, as to what our expenses were going to be going forward, what the budget for the government was going to be going forward, and that was killed. That was Wednesday, December 18th. Thursday, December 19th, we have this development. House Republicans tried and failed on Thursday evening to fast-track a measure to keep the government funded through a maneuver that required a 2/3 majority, pushing the government closer to shutdown. House GOP leaders can still bring it up through regular channels by sending it through committee. This enabled them to try passing it with a simple majority. But dozens of Republicans voted against the measure, while only 2 Democrats voted in favor. The final tally was 174 in favor, 235 against, and 1 present. Lawmakers are racing to avoid a government shutdown when funding runs out Friday night. The bill, which would keep the government funded through the spring and suspend the nation's debt limit for 2 years, would still need approval from the Democrat-controlled Senate. The White House has indicated that President Biden would not sign the bill. So what's happening? They wouldn't even sign it. The White House, Biden said, F you, I'm not signing it. He's like, I'm not signing it. Screw you guys. I hate all of you. This is so freaking dysfunctional. And that's fine, because honestly, if nothing happens, all the better. So Biden's like, F you guys, I'm not signing anything. Quote, we're going to keep trying. At some point, they're going to have to come to the table too, Republican House Majority Leader Stephen Scalise told reporters as he departed the Capitol Thursday night. The new deal would extend government funding for 3 months, suspend the debt limit until January 2027. So that which we have no debt limit until June 30th, that would continue for an additional year and a half and provide $110 billion in disaster aid. And the reason they put in the disaster aid here is to basically say, hey, all you North Carolina hurricane victims, don't you want the disaster aid? So they're standing in your way. They're standing, you would have it. We would have it for you. Forget how they wasted all that money on illegal aliens. No. The reason you don't have the money is because they're in your way. So Republicans are like, all right, here's your $110 billion for disaster aid. And this way, you make it that anyone who votes against it is like, oh, they're standing in the way of the victims of a disaster. It's a political maneuver, totally. It also includes healthcare policy extenders, funding for building Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge, and a renewal of the Farm Bill for 1 year. The House descended into chaos Wednesday when a GOP revolt spurred by President-elect Donald Trump and Elon Musk sank the original deal that House Speaker Mike Johnson had reached with Democrats. Republicans huddled on Capitol Hill on Thursday, crafting a new way forward. By the way, that other thing I forgot to mention, it also included a $60,000 a year pay raise for the House. Each of them would get an extra $60,000 a year. Johnson defended the new bill Thursday night, saying some bipartisan measures are still included in the new version. Quote, the only change to this legislation is that we're going to push the debt limit to January 30th, 2027. Oh, that's great. The new version is considerably slimmer at 116 pages compared to the 1,547 pages of the original continuing resolution. Trump immediately weighed in after release, calling it a success and a very good deal. Why? Because he doesn't want to have a debt ceiling. He wants no debt ceiling. He doesn't like the idea of a debt ceiling. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, New York Democrat, said the proposal is not serious and called it laughable. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, New York Democrat, praised the failed vote, saying now it's time to get back to bipartisan agreement. In a statement Thursday evening, White House Press Secretary KJP said Biden supports the bipartisan agreement to keep the government open, help communities recover, and all the other crap that she's always saying. As GOP anger grew over the original continuing resolution, the president called on Republicans to strip out additional spending, add a new element instead, raising or abolishing the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling, which limits how much the government can borrow to pay its bills, is suspended until the first quarter of next year. And Trump said he'd prefer to force Mr. Biden to approve raising the debt ceiling so he wouldn't have to, because he doesn't want to have to be the one to say I'm raising the debt ceiling. He wants to get that as a little Christmas gift from Biden. Trump reiterated his position on Thursday in a phone conversation with Robert Costa. Number one, debt ceiling should be thrown out entirely. No, it really shouldn't be. Trump said. Number two, a lot of different things they thought they received in a recent post-spending bill are now going to be thrown out 100%, and we'll see what happens. We'll see whether or not we have a closure during the Biden administration. But it's going to take place. It's going to take place during Biden, not during Trump. Still, Trump said the standoff could be resolved in a number of ways that would be very good. While stripping out most of the additional funding from the now collapsed deal is likely to satisfy many Republicans, Democrats spent the day slamming Mike Johnson for walking away from the agreement. There, Republicans would shoulder any blame for potential shutdown. And now it's basically a game of chicken. And who do you think it's going to hurt more politically? I'll tell you right now, no one's going to get hurt politically from a shutdown. Nobody. Because anything that happens a year and a half, 2 years before an election, no one remembers. No one remembers. No one cares. It's forgotten. I can promise you, November 2026, no one's going to remember a shutdown that happened in December 2024. Nobody. Nobody at all. Nobody's going to be voting saying, oh, I'm not voting for this guy because of the shutdown in December of 2024. No one's remembering it 2 years from now. Do you remember what the hell was happening in December 2022? Ask yourself this right now. Do you remember anything that was happening in December 2022? I'm just, maybe a couple of things. Enough that's affecting your vote. That would have affected your vote last month. Because I can promise you, it wouldn't have. It wouldn't have. The American public has a notoriously short memory. That could be a blessing, could be a curse, but it's a reality. One way or another, it's reality. So they're all sitting here saying like, oh, I don't want to be responsible for a shutdown because I don't want the political hit that's going to come with that. Nah, don't worry about the political hit. There's no political hit. You're not facing any political hit. No one cares. Nobody cares. Jeffries said earlier Thursday they were resolved to continue to stand up for the best interest of American people for the first time in Democrat history, because that's never happened, while lambasting House Republicans who he said detonated the bipartisan agreement because they had been ordered to shut down the government. They weren't ordered to shut down the government. They were ordered not to give that ridiculous, insane deal. We're prepared to move forward with bipartisan agreement. No one cares what you're prepared for. You guys are meaningless. You don't count. You're a minority. No one cares what you say. Jeffrey said a shutdown can be avoided if House Republicans will simply do what's right. Oh, shut up. I don't care what Jeffrey says. The initial plan to keep the government funded and the chaos that surrounded it also prompted intense criticism of Johnson, including from members of his own party. The full House will vote to elect a speaker on January 3rd. When the new Congress convenes, and one Republican, Thomas Massie, has already indicated he won't support him, nor should he. Trump has also been signaling that his support for Johnson is contingent on how the Louisiana Republican proceeds. The president-elect told Fox News Digital on Thursday that Johnson would easily remain speaker if he acts decisively and tough and eliminates all the traps being set by Democrats in the spending package. Asked by NBC News if he still has confidence in Johnson, Trump replied, "We'll see." What they had yesterday was unacceptable, Trump told NBC's Garrett Hack. In many ways, it's unacceptable. It's a Democrat trap. So that's what happened today. They had the slimmed down version and it failed. What comes out of that? Chip Roy was one of the people standing up against it. When they were arguing about this whole thing here, this is what Chip Roy got up and said.
I was just texting with my son back home in Austin, who I haven't seen in quite a long time because I'm here trying to fight for him. When I got through cancer about 12 years ago, I made my promise to my kids that I would do everything I can to save this country. And what we're doing right now is to continue to double down on the things that are destroying the republic.
By the way, Denise says, I love Trump, but I disagree with his fight with Chip. I agree with Chip on the spending. It needs to stop. Yeah. Hands One says, I'm waiting for Ladybug's Dirt to get released. Denise also said, Lindsey's looking more and more like the emperor every day. She gave this picture. That was a while ago. Just that a while ago. I'm late.
We are going to increase the debt ceiling, not just $4 trillion. That's false. We have spent $4.7 trillion in additional debt in the last 19 months. We're going to increase the debt by $5 trillion. That's what's going to happen right here by Republicans, increasing the debt $5 trillion. And what are you doing in the same bill? $110 billion unpaid for, because you never have any ounce of self-respect to go out and campaign saying you're going to balance the budget.
By the way, he's talking now. That side of the room is where the Republicans sit. He's yelling at the he's a Republican yelling at the Republicans. That side of the room he's looking at is the Republican side. The side behind him is the Democrat side.
And then you come in here and pass $110 billion unpaid for.
He's getting applauded by the Democrats.
On top of the $200 billion you did for WEP, you guys won't agree with that. But the fact of the matter is $330 billion. Congratulations. You've added to the debt since you were given the majority again on November 5th. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. Yes, I think this bill is better than it was yesterday on certain respects. But to take this bill yesterday and congratulate yourself because it's shorter in pages, but increases the debt by $5 trillion is asinine. And that's precisely what Republicans are doing. I am absolutely sickened by a party that campaigns on fiscal responsibility and has the temerity to go forward to the American people and say, you think this is fiscally responsible. It is absolutely ridiculous. It also turns off PAYGO. It turns off the $1.7 trillion in automatic cuts under PAYGO, because this side of the aisle is profoundly unserious about actually reducing deficits, just as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are profoundly unserious about reducing deficits. The entire body has been racking up debt for my entire life. $36 trillion, $1 trillion of interest. We rack up $1 trillion every 100 days. Now, what are we going to do about it? We're going to run around and talk about cutting taxes, but not doing what's necessary to cut the spending along with the cut taxes. My other side of the aisle, my colleagues will say, oh no, we got to increase taxes, but we'll do anything to cut spending. And so here we sit in the same mess. And I got to be honest, I want to remind people, this is Article 1. I yield back.
There you go. Fire from Chip Roy. Fire that did not make Trump happy. Well, how does Trump respond? Chip Roy is just another ambitious guy with no talent. By the way, how's Bob Good doing? I hope some talented challengers are getting ready in the great state of Texas to go after Chip in a primary. He won't have a chance. This is the guy we have to go after? This is the guy we have to go after? He's been getting attacked all day long. I'm going to tell you something right now. If I want you all to love me, if I was doing this so that people would be like, oh, I love Joe, and I always agree with Joe, and whatever, the easiest thing in the world for me to do, the easiest thing in the world for me to come out here and say to you is like, how dare anyone stand up to Trump? It is the easiest thing in the world today, December 20th, 2024, to stand up here and just say whatever Trump says, we all should just sit back and let him do his thing. He's Trump, and he's the president-elect, and he's got his agenda, and he's the one we elected, and he's and he's been attacked, and he did a great first administration. It's very easy to make a pitch for Donald Trump, and that would get a whole bunch of huzzah, rah-rah, yes, go Trump, we love Trump, we love Trump, we love Trump. And I do love Trump. I think he's a great president, and I'm hopeful he's going to be a great president in his second term. But that does not mean that I can come here before you and just say every decision he makes is the right thing, or is logical, or is consistent with what's putting America's interests at the forefront. And I know that he has a vision for how he wants America to look. And much of what he and I are completely consistent with how America ultimately should look. But the method for how to get there, I'm entitled to disagree with him and say this is not fiscally responsible. And I think I would be derelict in my duty to you as a podcaster, as a political commentator, to come out to you and start saying that, oh yeah, Trump says this, let's all go along with what Trump said. It would be the easiest thing in the world to come out and say that. But we need to critically analyze the logic here. Now, I'm going to say this. I was basically saying, look, we have to be fiscally responsible. And it doesn't matter who's spending the money if the money's being spent. And just because it's being spent by somebody I like doesn't mean it's not being spent all the same. It's still being spent. It's still a devaluation of your money in your bank account. Now, there is a counter to this that someone raised earlier about leverage and fighting with Schumer. And we'll talk about that because I think that's a fair counter argument. That raising the debt ceiling has certain elements to it that could potentially be beneficial, that has logic to it. And I'm willing to entertain that part of the conversation. I'm not saying that, oh, this is what we have, I'm not blind to the ramifications of the impact it politically has by having Trump walk in there with the debt ceiling. I have a counter to that argument. I have what I think is a pretty reasonable counter. And I'll probably take phone calls from some folks to discuss with them their thoughts as to like, okay, if you really think Trump is right in his call here, a guy who watches my show all the time was killing me today on X, Q Revere. He was basically saying like, why would you question Trump when he's always right? And I'm like, look, he's right a lot of the time, and I love a lot of his policies, but you can't deny the fact in his first term, the guy was spending money like it was an unlimited resource. He was, even before COVID hit. He spent more money than Obama did before COVID. And Obama, I was chastising him for wasting money. You have to be consistent here. I like the result a lot more from Trump. At least when he's spending the money, we had good times as opposed to under Obama where we had nothing. But to just sit here and say if Trump says it, it must be good. I'm sorry. I believe that if we're going to succeed in the long term, that MAGA should be about ideals and not idols. Because Trump is not going to be here 5 years from now. And whatever this country is looking like 5 years from now, we're still, God willing, we're still all going to be here. He's not going to be here 5 years from now. So you can't sit here saying there's rules for Trump which are special and different from what rules are going to work and govern after Trump is gone. I'm not looking to hamstring him. Well, let's look at some of the fighting that happened with Chip Roy and different takes on Chip Roy. Here was Chip Roy lashing out at Trump supporters today.
Some of our brothers and sisters, particularly in the MAGA camp, I think, particularly enjoy the circular firing squad. You want to come at me and call me a rhino? You can kiss my ass. Look, I've spent a lifetime fighting for limited government conservatism. I have laid it all on the line. I've not seen my family but for 2 days in the last 30 days. You go around talking your big game and you thumping your chest on Twitter. Yeah, come to my office and come have a debate, mother. You know why? Because I'm standing up for this country every single day. And Steve, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to go to a nunnery. Because God damn it, there were people who were buried over in Normandy who deserve us to stand up for what they fought for. So that's what I'm going to do. And all of you fuckers out there who are out there saying what you're saying out on social media, you stick it. I'm going to go down to the floor and do my job. And I'm going to stand up for the people who fought for this country. And I'm going to do it the way I think is right for the people that I represent. That's what I think. What happened to a country where we can't even have order? Mm-hmm. You want to know what Ron DeSantis should be talking about as being the governor who can restore order as president of the United States?
Yeah. A lot of people sitting here saying, well, here's why, raising these different issues with Chip Roy, that he was a DeSantis supporter, was never enough of a Trump guy, that he basically was asked Ken Paxton to step down. And I'm not going to sit here defending Chip Roy and his entire record. That's not what this is about. Okay. You want to hate Chip Roy because of his position on DeSantis. That's completely your prerogative. And I totally get it. You want to hate Chip Roy because of what he said with Ken Paxton. It's your prerogative. And I totally get it. I'm not standing here idolizing Chip Roy because I'm not idolizing any person. I'm simply talking about ideology, about what perspectives, what approaches are healthy for this country in the long term. So it's not like I'm sitting here and when I'm standing there saying, I agree with Chip Roy, that, yeah, you know what? We need to consider the debt ceiling. That's a really important thing. And to pretend it's not, you're fooling yourself. You're being so short-sighted. And I'm just going to say this. Like I said, I love Trump. Love Trump, love his first term. I'm really optimistic. Cannot wait for January 20th for him to come into office. Oh my God, I can't wait for that day. I plan on being there on January 20th and celebrating with the rest of you when he returns to the Oval Office. But that does not mean that he's not going to make mistakes or that we shouldn't call him out when it seems like he's doing things that could potentially lead towards our long-term detriment. And I'm going to point out one thing that we should be careful about, which is he has shown a proclivity to be much more focused on the short term than on the long term, because he wants everyone to like him. And he figures, okay, you know what? If we have a great 6-month, great year-long period, people will look back at him with fond memories. And that's not healthy for a country long-term. So I'm much more concerned about the long-term impact than the short-term. Much more concerned about that. Because the short-term impact is that's where you end up having all these big giveaways during COVID lockdowns. Like, hey, I got a big check now. That's not healthy for a country. So that's why, and I do have concerns that perhaps Trump is someone who seems inclined towards that type of road, where he'd be really, really fine with everything being great for the next 4 years. And if that leaves us in a far shakier position 5 years from now, that's less of his concern. So to the extent that it's possible, can you at least agree with me that it's possible that that's a concern we should have? That maybe we should be like, all right, look, we love Trump, great guy, great president, all that other stuff you want to say, but maybe he's not really thinking about what America is going to look like 10 years from now. And whatever he does now may seriously have an impact on what happens in this country 10 years from now. And that perhaps to a certain degree, those interests may not be perfectly aligned. So that's where I'm coming from. There you go. I got a few more things I want to look at with you guys here. And I'll tell you this. You know, with respect to the debt ceiling, I'll share one more video here before I get to some of your comments on this. 2 more. In support of the bill, here's a congresswoman who I happen to like and respect, who came out very strongly supporting the bill, and that was Anna Paulina Luna, came out supporting the bill. I'm going to give you all sides here, so you don't think I'm trying to lean one way or another.
I voted for a CR, but I'm here today because I realize that the plan that's on the table currently to keep our government open, but also the promise from the only president in my lifetime who's ever followed through on all of his campaign promises to the American people. Excuse me, I'm not done talking. Give me the same respect we give you guys.
The House will come to order. My colleagues are reminded the gentlewoman has the floor. She has the right to be heard. The gentlewoman has the right to be heard, and the gentlewoman would be reminded to direct her comments to the chair. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
From the only president in my lifetime who's fulfilled all of his campaign promises to the American people, has promised to cut hundreds of billions of dollars in reconciliation. You want to talk about shutting down the government. The deal that was negotiated was largely rejected by the American people, which, to Speaker Johnson's credit, pulled it from the floor, which is why we are here today. The deal on the table will keep the government open for the American people. And if you guys so choose to shut it down, it will be on you, but not the Republican Party. We will not be going back to the table. This deal stands as it is. So let you go back home on Christmas and explain to your people why you shut down the government, because we won't be doing it.
The House.
Furthermore, Mr. Speaker.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The gentlewoman is reminded to direct her comments to the chair. My colleagues are reminded to yield the floor to the gentlewoman from Florida.
Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the former bill had items in it to include random pandemic policies, biocontaminant research that were not in the best interest of the American people. So the deal on the table is as is. You either vote for or you vote for the shutdown, but it will be not on the Republican Party, but on Democrats as it stands. Mr. Speaker, I yield my time.
So there you go.
Gentlewoman yields.
I don't know what the hell they're screaming.
My colleagues,
But those are the Democrats screaming at her.
my colleagues, the chair acknowledges the emotion and passion behind all arguments. Please, the House will be in order. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves.
So there you go. That was Anna Polino Luna. And here's the older millennial. Well, let me get through some of your comments before I get to older millennial. All right. Fanny decides to get in and mutter herself, which is why she moved. It's only office members in case she would be okay. But she came in court testify. That was the stupidest thing she ever did. That should be a lesson to all district attorneys. Just never take the stand. Just never do. Brian Ogden, new member. Welcome aboard, my brother. OT for musicians. The electric harmonica I meant to just got a fabulous review. Off topic. That's what that is. I thought that was Old Testament. For musicians, the electric harmonica I invented just got a fabulous review on the Harmonica Revolution channel here on YouTube. Query Harmonicaster. Well, good for you. Well done. Nice. Catsard's real name is Philip Buchanan. Thank you. Cats are looking for the next job. Crenshaw making impotent gravy seal noises. Catsard. Army mode kicks in and the knife hand starts twitching. Give me the knife. Give me the knife. We do need term limits. I agree with that. U.S. regime change in 2014 in Ukraine for this war has cost more than 800,000 Ukrainians their lives for American greed. It should disgust folks. Yep. That's all true. H Coffee, how you been, brother? CR today is better than what we had yesterday, but single spending bills would be better. Stop letting media use government shutdown as a scare tactic. This just in, Biden and Harris rushed to the White House. All right, let me see what's going on with that. You're the second person to raise that to me. Biden, Harris, rushed White House. White House in crisis. Biden and Harris canceled Christmas trips and rushed back amid speculations of emergency. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris abruptly canceled their holiday plans on Friday, fueling speculation about an ongoing emergency at the White House. As per various reports, neither has issued a public statement, leaving the nation guessing about the sudden changes. Biden, who is expected to spend Christmas in Delaware, reportedly returned to D.C., taking his motorcade directly from the airport to the White House late in the evening. Similarly, Harris canceled a planned flight to California. The abrupt schedule changes have sparked widespread speculation on social media. One reporter noted discrepancies in the president's official schedule, saying the official schedule for Biden does say he was to return to the White House at 5:30 p.m., but as you can see, it was recently updated. Well, there you go. It just looks like emergency vehicles going by. I don't know what we're getting from this. All right. Another user posted Kamala Harris canceled a trip rushing back to the White House. What is happening? Oh, that's her motorcade returning. No one knows what's happening. Before his term, Biden had a conversation with Pope Francis, discussed efforts to promote peace during the holiday season. According to the White House readout, the president thanked the Pope for his advocacy on global issues and accepted an invitation to visit the Vatican next month. No one cares what Kamala said. She's an idiot. I don't know what to tell you about any of it. I don't know what to make out of any of that. Who the heck knows? Will we ever know? Who knows? Adrian says, yes, emergency EMPs are guaranteed pay, but not until at least at best a few weeks after shutdown. Well, you got paid, as I understand, on the 15th and 30th. That's what I saw. So, assuming this shutdown is resolved before the 30th, you'll get paid timely, hopefully, I would think. They're required to work for an IOU. I was essential for the 5-week shutdown 6 years ago. Took 8 weeks to actually get paid. That sucks. That definitely sucks. Blindly following Trump is not good. There's a list of GOP that needs to be primaried, and Chip Roy is not on there. I agree. And that's why I don't like this threat here from Trump. I don't like it. It's not necessary. He's not the guy. There's like 300 people who are much worse than Chip Roy. Whatever issues you have with Chip Roy, there's like 300 people who are in Congress. There's at least 200 Republicans who are worse than him. You always make that face when you say my screen name. I do? Duck and Felonies? What face? What's the face? Duck and Felonies. My tagline is in a world of provocation, meaning I'm level-headed. Hopefully this helps. All right. I don't know what screen name. This screen name? I don't remember making a face. All right. Charles Code gifting 10 good Lawgic memberships. What do we got here? What'd you gift? What'd you bring me? I forgot to make a goal tonight. That's not good. That's not good. Following 10 people brought into the following courtesy of Charles Co. That would include Pat Mack, Lady AR62, JG, Pow Angel, Alan Sparks, CHRXS, Terry Irwin, Lion Dogface Pony Soldier, Dina B, and Mike Chaput. Welcome to the following. Those of you who are new, I welcome you here. Please bear in mind that yours truly, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic, is not the leader of the following. I'm just a host. Not that there would be anything to be ashamed of for being the leader of the following, because the following is just a group of like-minded individuals, all seeking greater personal growth through community unity and leadership training. That's not at all a cult type of cult. So, yeah, not at all a cult type of cult. But thank you so much, Charles Cope, for your amazing recruitment skills. See, this guy's got skills. Mad recruitment skills. There you go. God bless you, brother. White House must have issued a TikTok challenge for who can make the most incoherent message. That would explain a lot. It would explain a lot. All right. I want to talk some more about this whole fight here between Chip Roy and about the debt ceiling, because people got thoughts on this. Here's a gentleman by the name of Older Millennial, who's a podcast content creator. And he's got thoughts. He's got thoughts.
I stand with Chip Roy. Donald Trump can shut the fuck up if he wants to attack him for having principles. You know, over the last half hour, I've done a little bit more research and a little bit of soul searching regarding this continuing resolution. And I got to say that Chip Roy is right. Like, he rightly pointed out that since Republicans took control of the House 2 years ago, they've allowed an additional $4.7 trillion to be added to the national debt. And this continuing resolution would push that over $5 trillion. $5 trillion in unpaid debt that we're going to be paying interest on. More than $1 trillion in interest alone. The people in Congress right now are just profoundly unserious about our debt problem, or more specifically about our spending problem. And it's a serious fucking problem. And look, like Chip said, sure, this version of the bill is better than the one that came out yesterday. But Republicans, we are either going to be the party of fiscal responsibility or we're not. There's no fucking middle ground in this. The time for middle ground is gone. This is a put up or shut up. If you want to be the party of fiscal responsibility, you need to be fiscally responsible. This type of shit has to stop. Like, let's be real. This continuing resolution could be one page. You could just adjust the date to be March 14th, and that would be the only thing you'd have to change to fund the government through the transition. That is all that is legally required to do it. And like Chip said, the shit has to stop. If we don't have the money for something, we don't get that something. The wild thing is, it's not like we don't have the money for shit at the beginning of the year. The problem is that we spend it on so many other fucking things that don't benefit Americans because our people in Congress know that no matter how much we spend, we're just going to authorize more. This shit has to stop. So yeah, I stand with Chip Roy.
There you go. Now, some people speculate and say, hey, look. And I had a whole bunch of people. I had a whole bunch of people telling me that if you give him a debt ceiling, that enables Chuck Schumer to come out there and negotiate and gives him more leverage in negotiations so that we don't default during Trump's term. As opposed to Trump can basically jump in and start taking care of his agenda without having to negotiate and take care of, appeasing Democrats and giving them something in order to get them to go along with funding. So the first question I have on this is, when it comes to funding, there's no filibuster. So you don't have to worry about the Senate. You don't have to worry about Chuck Schumer. This is the first question I have on this claim. If you're standing there making that claim, which I understand, you don't want to give leverage to Democrats. Totally get that. That makes sense. Walk me through this. When it comes to appropriations, when it comes to money and spending and budgeting, that is something that passes with in the House with a simple majority, and in the Senate with a simple majority. There's no filibuster. You need to get 60 senators. So why couldn't Trump and the Republicans be on the same page? Basically tell the Democrats, you don't matter. We don't care. You're useless. Goodbye. It's that simple. Like, I don't understand this concern about Chuck Schumer having leverage. What the hell do they have? They have leverage on something that's related to, things are unrelated to funding that you now need to have. That you need to have 60 senators on board for. There, Chuck Schumer would have some leverage. But on spending, why would he have any leverage? I don't understand that at all. All that simple majority. You have a majority in the House. You have a majority in the Senate. You have the White House. Tell the Democrats, go after yourselves. Go cry. Go talk to Harry Sisson and Morgan J. Free and JoJo from Jers and Brooklyn Dad Defiant and go crying to them. Go crying to MSNBC. No one cares. So whatever concerns you have, I don't understand why that would be I don't understand why that is a concern. That's first. Second, aren't we cutting? Isn't the whole thing about Doge that we're slashing the fat away, we're closing down the FBI or whatever it is. If you're not closing down the FBI, you're closing down the EPA, you're closing down all these different agencies. Doesn't that free up a whole bunch of cash? Whatever money you're spending, whatever billions you're spending there, how does that not free up tons and tons of cash? If you're really taking a big red magic marker and putting a list of different agencies and just being like squeak, 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 and fuera. How is this not freeing up a ton of money? So why is it that like all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, what's Trump going to do? How is he going to have money to fund everything? The Democrats going to have leverage over him because he's going to need money. Will he really need money? Isn't the whole point that he's going to be cutting all these agencies? He's going to be cutting down and slicing the fat and Doge and trimming this out and slashing that out? Why is everyone coming and telling me that Trump is going to be hamstrung? I had someone yelling at me, how dare you, like some freaking rhino, try to hamstring the great Donald Trump. I had Q Revere, who I know is a big fan of my show. He likes my work, and he was furious at me. How dare you question Donald Trump? You tell me, why is it that Donald Trump is not going to be able to just slash out this, slash out that, the way that we kept hearing he's going to do, and free up a whole ton of money to those people who are slashed? I just don't understand this. What am I missing? What am I not getting? These are the two questions I have to people. Maybe I'm missing something. And I'm not saying this facetiously. I mean sincerely. If you think I'm missing something, walk me through what you think I'm missing here. Because I don't get it. I don't understand these grave concerns. I don't understand why Trump has to have, if you're really going to get done all the things, the whole mandate we have here and get rid of all these different stupid agencies and trim down the CIA and tell the FBI you got to go out in the field, otherwise you're fired. I don't understand why it is that I'm sure a lot of them will leave. We're cutting down these different agencies of and these expenditures on teaching kids how to be gay or different expenditures on buying sex toys from the military or whatever stupid wastes of money that we have left and right. And just how is that not freeing up tons of cash? I just don't get it. I don't get it. I pay attention to you guys in the ghetto all the time. What do you got for me? Eyes, I'd rather make a Rumble rant in your name instead of a 1-month membership. I don't know what you want from me. What are you guys rambling about? Bill Dozer rated my stream. God bless you, Bill Dozer. What else we got going? Democrats have leverage until January 3rd. Yeah. I don't think until January 3rd. I don't think they got any leverage at all. Speaking of budgets and government spending, but did you read about Biden selling off $300 million of unused border wall at 99% off ahead of Trump's inauguration? He's a dick. Don't you understand? He's a dick. That's what he is. He's a complete and total douchebag. He's always been self-interest. That's all he's ever been. The hero of the left. The hero of the left. God. Walking disaster. I will tell you this. I don't think he's going to be pardoning any of these folks who the left want him to pardon. They want him to pardon the whole J6 committee. I think he's going to say the J6 committee, suck it. I really think so. It's a matter. He's like basically trying to decide, who do I hate more? Who do I hate more here? I hate everyone. Who do I hate more? That's what's dictating Joe Biden's behavior at this last month. For the last month and the next month, who do I hate most? That's who I'm going to try to punish. That's basically how he's running this country right now. If you think my take on this whole thing is wrong, if you think I'm not showing enough deference to President Trump, you tell me. Call in. I want to hear from folks who disagree with me. Tell me why I'm wrong. Okay? If you agree with me, don't call, because I assume everyone agrees with me. Because why wouldn't you? But if you disagree with me, the number to call is 972-454-0703. If you disagree with me and you think that I'm not giving enough deference to Trump, or that we need to have no budget, ceiling budget, then I'm not understanding something, or I'm misconstruing something, I want you to call up and tell me where I am wrong. And I will sit here patiently waiting for your calls. Okay? 972-454-0703. I'm going to have this little running banner here. Okay? Tell me.
Call from Adrienne.
Adrienne!
Joe!
How am I wrong?
I've been screaming at my TV screen. Okay, so the biggest thing that you are missing is that Doge will be making those changes for the 2026 fiscal year. Trump is going to need leverage for 2025 because the money has already been allocated for 2025, and hopefully before he takes office, the money will be obligated. Once it's obligated, he can't make cuts to that budget.
So first and foremost, okay, you're making fair points. Let me counter somewhat. Okay.
Okay. Please do.
Isn't like roughly a third of the spending that we make discretionary?
Yes, but once it's obligated, you can't cut it. You
Obligated.
Can cut it
let's make sure we're on the same page and understanding the term obligated.
Yes.
So when you're using the term funding being obligated, and I'm not sure if I really know the distinction between obligated and allocated.
Right.
Okay, because maybe allocated means both, right? When you allocate funds for something, as opposed to obligated, meaning it's mandatory that you spend it. Is that what you mean?
No. These are government budgetary terms. So Congress gives the budget to, like, let's say HHS, says you get $20 million, whatever it is. Okay, so once they've given it, it's now while it's in a bill, it's allocated. We're allocating the money to them. Once it's passed, that's now obligated. The money goes to them. You cannot change that without changing the budget bill.
Okay.
Okay. So now the money is now with the federal agency. Okay. So
it's not with the federal agency. It gets dispersed to them.
Yes. Once it's obligated, it's dispersed to the federal agency. That happens as soon as the budget's passed. So hopefully they're going to pass that, and so the money is at the federal agencies. Now, once the agencies get it, they allocate it to their different programs or whatever. And then once so it's allocated, then they obligate it once a authorized, I forget what the term is, but there's a money person at the federal agency that obligates the money and says, yep, we're spending it here. Now they can't touch it. And then
I think it's called OMB.
OMB.
Yeah,
That's its own federal agency. I'm talking within the actual, like, individual agencies.
Mhm.
OMB writes the budget for all of the federal government, but once the money goes to the agency, it's been dispersed. It's been obligated. It's gone from Congress's control.
So what
It's
you're
now
saying
under
is
the
this. Okay.
agency.
Okay. So let's assume there's a $10 billion budget given to HHS. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I assume that they don't. So now you're saying, so Congress will take $10 billion and some office that's under the like the OMB would cut a check, would probably cut a check like quarterly to HHS for $2.5 billion every quarter.
Right.
And so they'll cut a check on January 1st, and then on April 1st, and then July 1st, and then for $2.5 billion to HHS. HHS has its own war chest, and they basically take that $2.5 billion and they disperse it as they see fit, based on expenses that they have allocated. And okay, fine. When you're saying obligated, you're saying what stage is that?
Okay, so once like HHS gets it, they allocate the money, say I'm going to spend $1 million here, I'm going to spend 500,000 here, and then some official at the agency says, boom, I've signed this paper and it's now allocated. No changes can be made. If the government wants to take the money back, it's done. The money's obligated. The money's gone. Okay, and then they disperse it.
Who oversees HHS?
Well, the secretary of HHS.
And whoever the boss of HHS is, which will probably be appointed by Trump, right?
Yeah.
And that person ultimately answers to someone who answers to Trump.
Yeah, it's going to, well, hopefully RFK, who's going to answer directly to Trump.
Right, exactly. So my question is this: if he's cutting the budget, could he not say, okay, you know what? I understand that Congress allotted to you $2.5 billion, but we're making all these different cuts to HHS, and this quarter it's only going to end up costing you $1.5 billion instead of $2.5 billion. And over the course of the year, we're going to end up shaving down from $10 billion to $6 billion.
There's no mechanism to send the money back.
When you say there's no mechanism to send the money back, what I'm saying is in the second quarter, it could be like, yeah, we don't have to cut you a check for $2.5 billion. We'll cut you a check.
No, they've already obligated the money. When that bill gets passed, the money's obligated. Like it's obligated. There's no way to unobligate it without writing new federal laws to do that. And good luck getting that done within a year.
I'm just trying to figure out how this whole slashing thing is going to work. In other words, how the executive office, how the executive branch standing alone without relying on Congress actually doing anything, because Congress sucks. So now they're terrible at getting anything done. So the question I have is, so how would this get done effectually? And I'm simply saying at a certain point in time that it seems how he's overseeing this whole thing here, that he's the boss of the boss of the boss of the boss, whatever level of bosses there are, or you could even just, the head of HHS, RFK, reports directly to Trump. So in that case, that he can basically tell RFK, I want you to slash this thing down by 30%. And then we're not going to allocate to HHS the same funding in the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter.
Yeah, there is no second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. That the obligation is done when the bill is passed. So what you're doing is cutting for the next fiscal year's budget. Doge is not going to be able to affect 2025 at all. There's no changes.
I don't know how that's even possible when I keep hearing, everyone keeps telling me that we have nothing in place going forward or the CR. You're saying that the debt ceiling is only in place. Everything is allocated for the next year?
No, well, it is.
It can't be for the next year because they're always making a new budget in September. So it can't be a full year.
Well, yeah, they're supposed to be making a new budget in September. That's
Right.
what the whole budget is. The CR. So if you can change it before they pass the full budget, then yeah, you can make changes. But
If the CR is only going till March 30th, so wouldn't that give them control over spending that would happen from March 30, 2025 through the rest of the year, 2025?
it would have to go through Congress. Congress would have to make all of those changes.
Right. And what I'm saying is if Trump says to HHS, I want you to figure out how by April 1st you're slashing down from $2.5 billion per quarter to $1.5 billion per quarter. In that case, and he did that similarly, not just with HHS, but he did that with every agency by like 20 to 30%. Would that not then? I'm not saying get it all done, and I understand these sort of things take time. You can't. It's very easy sitting in my freaking living room and saying, yeah, they'll just slash and slash and slash. I understand that it's going to take more than a couple of weeks or a couple of months even to actually sort out which things stay and are essential and which things are slashable. I get all that. I understand all that. I'm simply saying we should start seeing freeing up of this money, not in 2026, but it should start actually kicking in 2025. Especially if we only have a CR that's dying on the 30th, and you can have another CR which is going to go for another 3 months, and then reassess it, where we're at that point with 12 other agencies. What, like how much money we still need for the FBI? How much money we still need for the CIA? How much money we still need for the EPA? How much money we need for Department of Transportation, or whether there is a Department of Education? You see what I'm saying? In other words, everyone's making it as if the way you were phrasing it is that everything has to be done. He can fire everyone in the Department of Education and just say, you're all fired. You're fired. All of you. You're all fired.
It's technically not a firing, but I get your meaning.
My point is there's a whole lot of slashing that he could do, in which case there would be a lot more money available. And then, yeah, okay, fine. Technically, that money wouldn't belong to the government. That would count, like that money could then be reallocated once there's no more Department of Education or Department of Transportation. Or Department of Transportation is slashed by 80%. So just figure out, okay, what roads are we building?
You are simplifying this down.
Of course, I'm simplifying it. Yes, I agree with you, and I understand. I'm not childish enough to believe that it's so simple. It's like taking a couple of blocks and just rearranging them, and all of a sudden, like everything here is just going to be completely. I understand. It's going to take a lot of work. He has a lot of people who are supposed to be coming into place in order to specifically make these slashes. This is the mandate. This is what he promised. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And if that is doing it, I think that perhaps that some of this funding that is allocated for 2025 would seem to be excessive, which is a great thing. That's a good thing. I'm not saying that's
I agree.
For.
I just don't think that any changes are going to happen in 2025.
Maybe
there's just no mechanism to do it.
I don't know why that. I don't know what mechanism that. Okay, so let me ask you this: how will it change in 2026? What's going to happen in 2026 that you're assuming that he does start making slashes? So how would that change things for 2026?
Well, then I mean, if they were getting like 20 million, and then you could, the budget proposals will come in for for 15 million, there's a cut.
So you're saying it's Congress's budget proposals?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
Congress,
absolutely.
Congress's budget approvals. And what I'm
Yeah.
saying is much of what Congress approves is discretionary spending. Now, how does money work, to your knowledge? Because you seem, familiar with the process here. So I'm going to ask you this: with respect to discretionary spending, what happens with those monies? Because supposedly a third of it is discretionary. My
Right.
thought is, if a third of it is discretionary, what happens if it's not? My gut says this: that when Congress, until now, for the last God knows how many decades, years, centuries, that when money was considered discretionary, it always got used, and it ended up being like we're spending it, and this, because if we don't spend it, then we're not going to get it next year, and our budget's going to be cut next year. So let's spend it this way. We can show we have a need for it, so we're basically disincentivizing any of these agencies to actually work efficiently, because we basically tell them, hey, if you don't spend the money, we're not going to give it to you next time. So. But what if Trump was to actually say, you know what, I'm gonna institute some sort of reward for those who actually don't spend much of their discretionary funding, and perhaps use that as a way to sort of encourage these agencies to self-slash, and in that sense actually, start making some actual cuts. And now, so when there's discretionary money, you said that a check gets cut from the government to HHS. So let's say out of that, instead, in addition to the 10 billion, there's another 10 billion that's discretionary.
Yeah.
So does that mean that every quarter they're getting 2.5 billion, or they're getting 5 billion?
It isn't by quarter.
Okay, so that means when they get their check, they get the full. I'm asking this: are the discretionary funds immediately sent together with the mandatory funds?
I don't know if they are sent together, but once they are obligated by the budget passing, they're obligated. They are gone. The horse has left the barn. Whether the horse makes it to the federal agency at the same time, I don't know, but the horse has left the barn, and there is no getting it back in. The money is gone.
It doesn't make sense to me that discretionary spending is automatically gone. You want to tell me that mandatory spending is automatically gone? That I can better understand. There has to be some sort of distinction, because what if there would be an agency that doesn't spend their discretionary money? What happens then?
That it doesn't happen.
Okay, but what if discretionary means it's not mandatory that gets spent? If there was an agency that saved $10 from the discretionary spending, they were supposed to spend $20 billion, and they spent $19,999,999,000, and were left over with $1,000 left over of the discretionary spending. What would happen with that money, to your knowledge?
Well, it stays with the agency, and it just becomes stale.
So just sits in a bank account forever? See, I don't think this makes sense. This doesn't make sense to me. It's like how this operates.
I understand it doesn't make sense, because there is no mechanism to send it back. That's why you have to spend it. If you don't spend it, it becomes stale, and money can't become stale, so you have to spend it. I mean, when I was working, and I will not say what agency, but we would buy photocopiers on September 20th every year. You don't need a new photocopier every year. We would do that to spend the money, because it doesn't. There's no mechanism to send it back.
What was your function? Don't tell me the agency, but in what capacity were you working?
I was working under the administrative officer, who was an obligator of funds.
Mm-hmm. So, there has to be an answer to this question, which makes sense.
Well, no, there is an answer. Congress would have to pass some sort of a bill or legislation to allow money to come back. That's a simple answer. There just isn't one right now.
I would
There
think that
isn't
the
a
executive, I would think that the chief of the executive branch would be able to send money back if he was so inclined.
You'd think that, but the government does not work the way you think it should or would. I have been very frustrated over the past 20-some years at how badly things don't make sense. I know.
So,
I know.
what do you think about the whole debt ceiling situation?
I don't want the debt ceiling to be raised. I think that's ridiculous. I really do. But I mean, I understand
You
why
agree with
he
Chip Roy?
wants
You
it.
agree? You agree with Trump?
I understand why Trump wants it, but no, I agree with Chip Roy. It should not be raised. It shouldn't. We can't keep throwing money like more and more and more debt. You have to stop it. You have to.
Yeah. So eventually, I'm terrified the dollar's going to collapse. I'm really terrified. This is like my biggest fear is that the dollar's going to collapse. And when I say collapse, I don't mean like the inflation we saw under Biden. I know. I mean like milk going for $50 a gallon.
Yeah. No, that I don't even want to think about that. That cannot happen. But
we can keep saying it cannot happen, but somehow
I know it can.
We've seen plenty of countries throughout history that have seen it happen.
Oh yeah, I do not disagree with that. I just we need a better way of doing things. One of the things that I really hope Doge is going to do is set up those mechanisms so that stuff makes sense.
Hopefully.
Because I mean,
have you applied yet to work for Doge? Have you applied to work for them?
No.
I see your phone number is you're living in the DC area, so
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
I was DC my whole life. I now live in Montgomery County, Maryland.
You a Redskin fan?
You know, I was, yeah. And
so
then
you're a big fan of Jaden Daniels?
No, I mean I was a Redskins fan.
You gave up on them when they became the Washington football team? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I am not a Commanders fan.
I feel you.
I will never be a Commanders fan.
I would have been exactly the same way. I would. Let's put it this way. When I was a little kid, I was a Jet fan. And the day they moved from Shea Stadium to New Jersey, I was done with them. I was like, you broke my heart. I remember Mark Gastineau, New York Sack Exchange, Abdul Salam, Joe Klecko, Freeman McNeil, all of them. I'm telling you, Richard Todd. I remember seeing jerseys in Todd We Trust 1981 when they had the Mud Bowl and he threw that pick six to freaking stupid AJ Dewey and the stupid buzzing killer bees of the Miami Dolphins. I can't tell you how it broke my heart. But I was diehard gangrene like you cannot possibly imagine. And then they moved to the Meadowlands, and I was like, you moved to the enemy states. Now I didn't know I would eventually move there myself.
You followed them.
I live a stone's throw from the Meadowlands. Every time the crowd roars, I can hear it. Well, no, that's exaggeration. That's exaggeration.
Okay.
I'm like 4 miles from the Meadowlands. But that's when I became a Cowboy fan. Because my best friend was a Cowboy fan, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go with you.
I can't support that. I cannot support that.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I am no longer a Redskins fan, or I'm not a Commanders fan, I cannot support the enemy Cowboys.
I get that. Yeah, no, if I was a Redskin fan and saw them become the Commanders, I probably would have found some AFC team that I would start rooting for. Maybe like the Steelers. I probably would go with like the Steelers or the Ravens. Yeah. That's probably where I would have gone.
I mean, but I just can't get excited about the Ravens. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's different changing allegiance when you're 13 than when you're Adult.
47.
I wasn't gonna guess your age, but I was just gonna say not 13.
Right, yeah.
You're not 13.
No, I'm 47.
Oh. Yeah, it's you can't just change allegiance at that point. You just feel
No,
feel numb. All right, no one wants to hear us talking football. We've been doing it for a while.
I know, right?
All right, I appreciate the call. That was awesome. That was very informative. Thank you.
No, I hope I didn't confuse you even more because it's.
I just think there has to be an answer on discretionary funding.
Oh yeah, no, there absolutely is. But once the bill is passed, it's no longer discretionary. It's discretionary up until they pass the bill.
Right.
That's the piece.
That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't, because I know the bills say that some of the funding is discretionary. I still think that there's got to be more of an answer on this discretionary thing. But I feel like there's a vital nugget or two of information that I still feel like I'm missing. But you were very, very helpful as far as helping me better understand how the money works its way through DC. Thank you.
Well, we'll see.
All right.
And hopefully it'll change, and I will know nothing.
Have a good. That's true. Have a good night, Adrian.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Yankees. Die Hard Yankees. Harris Biden rushed back to the White House amid speculation. I actually was just talking about that like 15 minutes ago. And no one knows what the heck is happening. And I was saying, I don't know if we'll ever know what happened. But I appreciate the heads up on that. Remember when Biden couldn't change the use of funds allocated to building the wall? Yeah. I don't know. Cash talked about returning cash to Congress. Yeah, there has to be a way to do it. There has to be a way. Fighting now on four fronts.
Call from
James X.
To accept, press 1.
James X. You think I'm wrong? Tell me where I'm wrong.
I believe that Trump needs the money so that he can get his programs off the ground, like having to buy the steel for the wall again. And the money that's already allocated is gone. It would be like it being in your escrow account. Once it's in your escrow account, you can't touch it again. And talking about that, let's look at FEMA.
So what programs? What programs do you think he needs? So explain to me. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying this facetious. I want you to really explain to me. What do you think he's not going to have funding to do if there's a ceiling in place?
There'll be an argument over having to raise the debt ceiling, and that will give them leverage. Democrats.
Okay.
And
well, first and foremost, there's no debt ceiling until June 30th, right? Because the debt ceiling is by statute that was passed in 2023 has been eradicated until June 30th, 2025. So he has nearly 6 months. He has over 5 months that he's not going to be dealing with the debt ceiling. What are we envisioning that he's not going to be able, that he's going to struggle with because of this debt ceiling? Because I heard a few people say what you're saying, and when you're having conversations by X, it's very hard to give out detailed type of explanations as to where what your concern is, unless you're willing to invest in spending 40 minutes writing something out, and that doesn't. It's just not conducive to well thought out conversation. And what you're saying echoes what a lot of people have been saying to me. My question is, okay, so what's the next step? What exactly does that? How will that manifest? I'll give suggestions to you as to like one way that can manifest. Right? He wants to set up Doge. You want to set up Doge? That sounds like it's going to cost some money, right? You're going to have to pay people we're going to work for Doge.
He can do that already. He can do that already, just like Biden set up his gun thing. You know, he set it up out of the White House. He can do that out of his president's fund or whatever.
Okay, fine. So tell me how the
Doge, he can set up that without even thinking about, you know, where the money's coming from. But like the wall, building the wall and having the construction money again, he's going to need that.
So, so you're saying all the funding that's going to be needed to help remove these folks who were the aliens. That is something that he needs funding for, and the debt ceiling is going to get in his way for removing aliens.
Well, you got to have the airplanes. You've got to have the places to store the people. You've got to feed them. You've got to clothe them.
Right.
You know, they took down Obama's cages.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, where are we going to put these people when we go and catch them? And then, you know, the ones that they're originally going.
So right. So here's my thought back, and I'll speculate with you. Okay. So if we're spending $20,000 per year per alien, I'm just throwing a number out there. It could be 50,000. Right. It could be 3,000. Whatever the number is, $25,000 a year per alien, right?
Okay.
And we end up removing a third of the aliens during the first year. So is that not savings so couldn't we be diverting some of the money that's allocated towards, I don't know, feeding them, housing them, whatever it is, medical for them, and now basically divert that towards funds for their removal?
I would say no, because FEMA is sitting on a bunch of money that's allocated for the illegals or the aliens.
But it's not just FEMA. I'm sure there are. I'm
just
sure
going to talk about FEMA.
Okay, go ahead.
FEMA's got this huge amount of money that they have for the illegals,
right?
But they don't have any money to take care of Americans because they can't move the money over, which I think they probably could. It's just Joe Biden doesn't want that to happen, and that's one thing that Doge could probably do, because it's probably not written into exact law, but it's written into, well, we're going to put this money over here.
But I'm saying, as chief of the executive branch, doesn't FEMA ultimately answer to him as of January 20th?
Yeah.
So if FEMA answers to him, why couldn't he have FEMA say, okay, we're spending this money towards transplanting you back to your country of origin?
He should be able to.
So then he doesn't.
Should be able.
He wouldn't need more money. Whatever money FEMA has, instead of dedicating it towards housing for the next year, have it on as a plane flight back to Colombia.
Correct, but the problem is that we don't know is how was that money given to FEMA by Congress?
So you're saying FEMA's not going to have the money in 2025 because of the debt ceiling?
No, what I'm saying is it might have been allocated for just taking care of the aliens.
But that's
Congress.
But that's the thing is, like you just said a minute ago, this is what's so confusing to me. You just said to me a minute ago, and I agreed with you that the money's given to them, but then how it's implemented ultimately ends up being something that the agency themselves ends up because it's not really fleshed out in the statute. So it ends up being something that you would think the head of the executive branch or the head of FEMA agency who's going to be appointed by Trump, and hopefully is going to be acting things out consistent with his views as to how things should be operating, that they would be in a position to say, okay, well, it was supposed to spend this money on taking care of them. Taking care of them means getting them on a plane back to Colombia.
Right. Well, I agree with you, but I'm saying I bet that.
But then he wouldn't need more money. You see what I'm saying? It's that money that we're spending on their clothing or on their housing or on their medical that now is going towards a plane flight.
Right.
So then he doesn't need them. My question keeps coming back to, so then why does he need the money? What money is he needing?
Now, maybe
because it depends upon how it was written in the bill.
That's true.
When
That's
Congress passed it.
That's true. And maybe some of them he would be prescribed from being able to use it as fluidly as I'm describing. That's very possible.
Correct.
And that's very and I can see that. I can see that. And I can also see that, whatever monies it costs for that, for housing for the next year, it theoretically could cost more than that to assess where these people are supposed to be returning to and all the other stuff, that it could end up costing more per person. I heard some ridiculous estimates that's going to cost $75,000 per person to get them back. I don't understand how the hell that's possible, but let's pretend for a moment that number is accurate. Perhaps that's more than they have assessed on a per illegal basis currently. So
I think that has a lot to do with legal fees and the people that are fighting and doing all that, more than it does actually with moving them.
Yeah, possibly. Well, one way or another, if that is what it's going to cost, which I don't believe it's going to cost anything like that. Can't imagine how it would cost even a third that amount of money. But especially because so many of them will be handled as a group. But I don't know.
Well, you got to remember the sanctuary cities that aren't going to help us. It's going to cost more money because we're going to put more men in there.
I think sanctuary cities should be illegal.
Most definitely. You should not be able to say, I'm not going to follow federal law.
If Biden can force Texas to respect the federal government domain over illegal aliens, that they can't even protect their own freaking border, and the court stood up for them and said, yep, that's true. Federal government's exclusive domain. Texas has no standing there to protect its own freaking border. I don't understand how San Francisco has a right to defy the federal government as to how we deal with illegal aliens. Doesn't make any sense. It's like it makes zero sense to me. It's so
I don't know how that
philosophically flawed. It's astounding.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'm thinking it probably has to do with maybe states' rights. But
states don't have rights with respect to illegal aliens. That's, by the way, another thing. I actually tweeted this out today. California over the last 4 years has lost 1.5 million people, and New York has lost 965,000. And the reason that they're okay with it is because when it comes to the census, we count illegal aliens. And I'll tell you right now, that's the next thing we need to change, because you want to stop these states from fighting you and trying to get these illegal aliens in here. You just tell them, we're not counting these people toward your census.
Well, no, we need to count them.
No, what I'm saying is now you're not getting representatives. You're not getting representatives in the House for having an extra 7 million illegal aliens in your state. We're not giving you any more representatives for that. And if they see that they'll start changing, because we're not giving you extra funding for your number of people you have there because of your illegal aliens.
Not U.S. citizens. Right. Yeah. You don't need more for your schools because these aren't U.S. citizens we're educating.
Yep.
Which, I'm going to say something that's weird, or not weird, but how about all these kids that come from overseas that go to our schools that have to pay extra money to go to college?
Well,
but we're gonna educate all the illegals for free.
I have a whole other theory about how we can fix our education system in a snap of your fingers. You want to hear what my plan is for how, because when I went to law school, it cost $23,000 per year to go to law school, and now it's like $7,000. Now it's 30 years later, and it costs like $70,000 a year, which is insane. You want to know how you do it? I'll tell you how you do it.
How do you do it?
Set up a schedule as to what you cap them as to what they can charge for their room, board, education. This is it. Something like $20,000. You can basically take whatever, in the CUNY system. This is the City University of New York. The College University of New York. I don't even know what CUNY stands for, but it's basically city-oriented, funded college system.
they have different prices for residents of New York versus non-residents as to what they charge. You can basically take their fee schedule for what they charge New York City residents. You say, this is the amount of money you are allowed to charge any of your students. That's it. And if you want to go above that, that's totally fine. That's your right. You have every right to do that. But once you go above that yardstick, you are now no longer a not-for-profit organization. You are a for-profit organization, because we know what the standard is in order to be working as a non-for-profit. If you're working for the greater good, and that's noble, and you want to go that route, in that case, you can be not-for-profit, and you can retain your not-for-profit status. But if you start charging any more than that, in that case, you're now a for-profit university. And as a for-profit university, any donations you get from your benefactors and your alumni is now taxable. And every one of them will slash down to match what CUNY charges their students, because they make way more in donations from their alumni. Every one of these Ivy League schools who are these fat mansion places, they all make tons more from their donations that they get from their alumni. They get those donations because they're tax free. They get they get so much funding, grants and stuff, and millions and millions that they get from their alumni that they would lose in a snap of a finger if that money was taxable. And it becomes taxable when the university gets it, it's taxable, and we can still tax the donor that we're going to take the money, that it's not a tax deduction for you. If you did that, you say, look, you can choose. You don't have to be charging so little, but if you charge them above that, you're now a for-profit institution, and we are now going to hit you with taxes. You lose your 501c status, and boom, every one of them will slash their tuition fees and match what CUNY is charging, and you don't have to think about it anymore. And all these people who, instead, this whole scam of college, which is an utter outright scam, where people are paying thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, building up $300,000, $500,000 worth of debt so they can get a stupid piece of paper on the wall that doesn't help them or their future employer in getting anything done. And boom, presto bango, all of a sudden, no one would have to start to be paying any of these ridiculous, build up that debt like that with like every kid who comes out of college has. And then boom, that's it. That's my solution right there. If Congress passed that, this whole thing would be, the entire education crisis would be dissolved like that. The only reason they don't is because they get paid by these colleges. They get their donations themselves.
That would work.
Yeah, I know.
That would work.
I came up with the solution 15 years ago. I haven't heard anyone actually promoting it, but it's the most obvious thing.
Well, the colleges are kind of twisted, because sometimes they say they're private, and then sometimes they say they're state, depending upon what they're doing or where they're going. Like when they build or expand, oh no, we're part of the state. Oh no, we're private.
Yeah.
They hide behind that too.
You're raising interesting questions for me, though. You're raising interesting questions with the whole debt ceiling thing. You're raising interesting questions that I think is legitimate. This is what I will tell you. I hear, I can hear an argument saying that perhaps America would be better off if there was no debt ceiling. I don't like the finger pointing of you're a rhino, or like you have to fall in line with whatever Trump says, or if you can walk me through an explanation as to why he needs it. But okay, you know what? Maybe that makes sense. Maybe I agree. Maybe I disagree. But at least understand that let's get back to a place where it's like, you're not an evil person. You're not a rhino. You're not corrupt just because you disagree with what's the best, the healthiest way to proceed. And I would love, certainly within the Republican Party, to the extent that we're not dealing with the rhinos. We're not dealing. Chip Roy is not a freaking rhino, okay? And anyone who says he's a rhino or he needs to be primaried, that's wrong, and that should be called out as being wrong. And I don't care if Trump's saying, I don't care who's saying it. It's wrong. He's he at least is working by a certain set of principles which are not governed by self-interest, which is what a rhino is all about. A rhino is about self-interest. What Chip Roy is doing is not about self-interest. It's about what he thinks is a healthy way to run things. You want to tell me there's an exception here because Trump wants to implement all these new things and he needs that? We can argue philosophically about that. I can hear an argument and say, look, and admit that I'm really not sure enough about the way the finances work in Congress and between these different agencies to definitively say this is right or this is wrong. But don't, like, the whole pointing and saying you're wrong, whatever, you're an evil person, or you can't be trusted anymore. This is a very unhealthy way for us to develop into being a richer and better and more efficient country.
I believe that's true. I believe we need to quit the finger pointing and just fix the problem and quit blaming people.
Amen.
If we quit blaming people and move on from that, we could get much more done.
Amen.
The one thing that I have a problem with about everybody says, I'm a Republican. Well, Republicans where I'm from are different than Republicans up in New Jersey or New York.
That's probably true.
And my representatives are supposed to represent me
Amen.
and my state, but they don't.
Yep.
They don't stand up and say, this is what we want. And that's one thing that Elon got everybody to do yesterday was he got everybody to call, everybody to text, everybody to say, we don't want this. No, this is not what we wanted. And that shocked them.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
They didn't know how to respond to that. And the people still don't know how to respond to it, that once the masses know what's going on and how it's going to affect us, and they can reach right out and say, hey, we don't want this.
It's a whole
they shut
other
it
world.
down.
Yep. It's one of the best developments of the 21st century. It's one of the positives it's one of the biggest positives of social media is that we actually have a much easier connection to our politicians than ever before. Like they have to respond to us, and there's a much bigger payoff for being invested in what's going on in politics. That you actually have much more influence today without having to live in Washington, without having to know certain people. That if you can build up a little bit of a following, you could actually have some sort of influence. And even if you don't have a following, that there's enough, you can sort of join in with groups that actually, care about promoting interests that align with yours. So that's one of the most positive things that's come out of the 21st century so far.
I do agree with that.
All right, my brother, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. I appreciate the call.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too, my friend. Amalon says, Neurodivergent 1 verified because there are enough rhinos to F things up, Joe. That's definitely true. That's definitely true. I missed this where Don Manning said, Real Patriot Party, now it's perfectly acceptable and encourages to insult Joe in the chat box. I don't know what that means, but I missed it earlier, so I got it now. Did I miss anything else here? I don't think so. Use OR contracts to fly illegals back home. What are OR contracts? I'm Googling it. Office Refugee Resettlement. Yeah, that's what I was basically saying. Yep. How about making universities primarily responsible for paying back the loan? Yeah.
Call from
am running.
Pamela.
Call from am running.
Sam.
Hey, Joe, how are ya?
Awesome. How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing really well, and this debt ceiling thing has me bothered as well.
You got to turn that off in the background because it's just confusing.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I just did. That's better. I can't raise my debt ceiling every month.
Right.
As far as my budget, I go, oh yeah, I'm going to spend $20,000 this month, but next month I think it's going to be 30. I mean, it's just basic.
There's no limit. There's no limit.
Basic economics, yeah. But it's like, wait, how am I going to pay for this? There are a lot of things that I was hoping that the Doge would be an audit function. They appropriated, I think, in 2023, probably 2022, $23 billion to replace all the HVA systems in the schools because of COVID. Now, they didn't even know what one HVA system would cost, and they didn't know how many schools. And then where is that money now? The infrastructure bill would be stretched over years going into like 2026. When 2026 comes, is the money there? Or is like, oops.
No, they give fresh funding in 2026 and then fresh funding in 2027.
But they appropriated the bill in like in 2022 or 2023 that it would be, the billions would be spaced over years. And it was forecasted out that far.
Right.
But is it anybody going to remember that and go, where did that money go?
Oh, I can assure you that whoever disperses that money will remember it. I can assure you that. And they're gonna be like, they're gonna go to the OMB and say, "Cut me my check. Look over here in this bill. I'm supposed to be getting a check."
Well, and Pete Buttigieg's charging stations, they installed 5 at the cost of how many billions?
I think it was 7 at $1 billion apiece.
Yeah, and so where did that money go? That's why I'm hoping that Doge is an audit function.
Amen. I agree with you on that 110%. I want them to be auditing. I want them to be firing. The question is how they're going to operate. Like, in other words, what authority levels they're going to have, and what the root of their authority to act is going to, how that whole thing is going to. I'm sure this is something that Elon and Vivek has spoken with Don about. Like, they are sufficiently savvy in getting things done.
They are.
That I have confidence.
100%.
That I have confidence that Elon and Vivek, before they said, "I'm going to step into this role," reached an agreement with Donald saying, "Okay, how is this going to be more than just, well, we think that this should have like some advice. We're going to give you some advice, but this advice is actually going to translate into action." Because Vivek in particular, and I'm sure Elon in creating all these successful businesses, had to have been people that when you have an efficient business person, they understand how to go from vision to completion. And
you don't spend money you don't have in a business.
Right. And the point I'm getting at is, so when they're looking at Doge and investing their time in Doge, they need that to be a success, because this is a large part of like their reputation and everything that they're about is success of the Doge. And they understand enough about how things work that they have to. I'm sure that they were they were very detailed as to like, okay, exactly what steps are going to happen from us coming in there and setting this thing up, and to actually effectuating that things will be slashed, rather than just being like, we're going to write a report and then it's going to go in someone's garbage and no one's going to care about it and it's not going to have any impact on the government. So I'm sure that
therein lies their genius, because I'm sure it is such a web of twisted stuff that you can't even follow a paper trail
right
to any of the money.
Right.
I think that we should send in a lot of guys with briefcases that are accountants. And my thing is just don't elect a lawyer, elect an accountant.
Well, that's definitely
because we need them.
I agree with you that you need people who actually understand how the money is flowing here. I'm simply saying that the step-by-step thing, as far as how the legal things will work, I have a feeling that Vivek has worked that out. That's what. Even though we don't know how it's going to manifest, I'm very eager to see what authority they're going to have to actually slash the EPA, to slash the CDC, to slash the INS, to slash whatever it is that they're slashing. That what authority? I'm sure he has that worked out, because I cannot imagine Vivek walking into this without having that plan in place.
Right.
Anyway,
I was thinking about past funds as well. I guess.
Yeah, you're not getting that money back. You're not getting that money back, Pam. You're
right.
That's
we
not
just have to go forward.
Yes, look forward rather than backward. Anyway, yeah. I gotta wrap up. I gotta wrap on up here because I'm feeling tired. So I'm gonna let you go. I appreciate you as always.
Okay, good talking to you, Joe.
Pam,
hugs and kisses to the family.
I will. Thank you.
And,
Thank you so much.
Of course, your dad, you're good, Joe. He's excellent, Joe, or excellent, Joe. Is that what?
What was that?
Your dad.
Oh, great Logic.
When you're good Logic, he's excellent Logic.
Great Logic.
Great Logic. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Pam. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye.
All right. I'm gonna land my plane because I'm feeling tired. Like I said, I get tired. It's time for me to get on out of here. All right. That's my show. I'm sticking to it. Tomorrow I'm supposed to be joining my friend Eric at noon tomorrow. So yeah. And so you can catch me there. Join up at goodlogic.locals.com. And you'll get notifications about where I am, and things will happen. All right, my friends. Let me, they, them, not you. Do not eat the bugs. And good night. Godspeed.